I'm Jesse.
Brandon.
I'm Frank.
Usually I'm last, but Frank was late.
What? There's no set order.
I feel like it's always, I'm Jesse, Frank, Brandon.
Actually, it's I'm Frank. I'm Jesse. Brandon.
Well, it doesn't matter because we've all been lying this whole time.
How so?
I'm Jesse.
I'm Frank.
Brandon is I.
Almost.
And we're still the Chronic Canon.
That's right. And we're smoking movies and we're talking weed. We're live in our ears, not in yours.
Damn right.
And Frank,
Come on.
what's that thing about heat?
If you don't like it, you gotta go.
Yes.
It's okay if you haven't seen it, though.
Yeah.
Yes, that is.
Man,
okay.
we're switching everything up today.
You
You
can
guys
stay.
are trying to make my brain hurt.
What are you talking about?
Nothing.
Okay.
I'm Brandon.
I found out what
I'm
gaslighting
Jesse.
was the other day.
Fuck!
You are Jesse.
I know.
And I'm Frank. Don't do this to new listeners.
If you are a new listener, welcome.
Yeah,
hello.
hello.
I'm so sorry in advance.
No, it's cool.
No, it's good. It's a
What's
good
up?
movie.
We hang out, get high, or don't. It's okay if you
Viva
don't.
Las
You don't-
Vegas.
You don't have to smoke weed, but you can if you want to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just get the contact high off of us.
We're here talking about Martin Scorsese.
We're here talking Sassy again for like the fucking, 15th episode in a row?
Yeah.
yeah, legendary American auteur.
He's Italian,
Italian American.
Italian American auteur. That is an important distinction.
Mhm.
just like Christopher Columbus.
Because he gets into the Italian stuff here too, and Casino, the subject of today's episode.
Yeah, we
Yes.
are talking about Casino. It is his 15th movie.
Which I'm ready to cry. This is our last Bobby D and our last Pesci before it's
Irishman.
all done, before the Irishman.
10
I can't
more.
wait. I've already
No,
had
9 more?
conversations with a few friends who already prompted me without telling them, even though we have already discussed here on the Chronic Canon, Jesse,
I'm Frank.
Brandon.
that we're going to have all of our friends who love Scorsese and The Irishman on the podcast. Well, not on the podcast, but just there for the final watch of The Irishman
Okay.
before we record our podcast. And our good old reliable Birdman has
Birdman.
offered up his services to cook the Goodfellas prison sauce.
Nice.
Yes.
It's got to be thinly sliced with
Yes.
a razor blade.
With a razor blade.
man.
He said he's going to use the razor blade.
Good man.
For real.
It's going to come back with like one less finger. Like, hey, guys, I did it.
So,
Have you guys ever seen that SNL sketch with, I think is it Dan Aykroyd? I can't remember who it is who does it, but somebody slices their finger open with a knife. Like, oh, I cut the dickens out of my finger. And it's just bleeding everywhere. And they keep trying.
The French Chef
That might be it.
with Dan Aykroyd? Looks like that might be
Let's
it.
watch it real
It looks
quick.
like he's being a lady.
Now that we've watched the clip again, if
Mhm.
you haven't seen it before, look up the French Chef SNL. It's
He's
pretty,
being Julia
pretty
Child.
funny,
Yeah.
especially if you're high. Definitely,
Yeah, it was good.
get real high and then immediately go watch it. It's fun if you like a lot of blood. But you know who else likes a lot of blood?
Boom.
Scorsese,
Nice.
True.
especially in this movie, because this is certainly one of his more outwardly violent movies, like right on screen.
Really?
I'd say you see some of the most disturbing graphic
Oh,
violence
wait.
in
Yeah,
this
you're
than
fucking
anything
right.
else.
Yeah.
I'm
Really?
sorry.
Did
Yeah.
you watch Casino?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
There's two scenes.
All of a
in
sudden, I started
particular.
hearing the clanging of metal, and I was like, yes.
Ah, okay.
Bats.
And yeah,
Bats.
that
Just real quick to
crank thing.
yeah, before we get into it,
With
Vice.
fucking eyeball.
that's a fun fact that people talk about through the lineage of Scorsese's movies, that Frank Vincent and Joe Pesci appear in 3 movies together in Scorsese's canon: Raging Bull, Goodfellas, and Casino. And in Raging Bull, Joe Pesci's character beats up Frank Vincent's character. In Goodfellas, Pesci's character kills Frank Vincent's character, and now in Casino, Frank Vincent's character is the one who kills Joe Pesci.
And beats him up very much.
So he kind of gives
beforehand.
him a bit of both, because
Yeah.
that is maybe one of the. I remember when I saw this movie for the first time just last November, that might have been the most disturbing scene of violence in any Scorsese movie, because
Yeah.
it is.
It is.
I was shook. I
It
was
definitely
literally
is.
shook. It's weird how he can, because whenever I think of Sassy and I think of violence, I don't know if this goes the same for you guys, but I automatically go to Raging Bull just because that's the most like uncomfortable violence that I've had to sit through.
Mhm.
But this is the first time since then. I feel like that's saying something, having seen Cape Fear or whatever. But this is the first time since then where like the violence being depicted on screen is just like, I don't even want to fucking watch this, dude.
I think
And they let it play out, which is it's brilliant. Like it really drives home the force that like it was personal
And this
and
lifestyle
business.
doesn't pay.
yeah.
at all.
Like Joe
The
Pesci's
repeated
character,
message.
that's the other thing. Joe Pesci's character, the whole movie's got all the power, and then he's reduced to nothing but a pile of dirt in
No.
the end.
I feel like he starts like in the middle and then he rises and then there's his fall.
Yeah, just so you know, this is a spoiler-filled podcast.
Yeah, is there a way that we can clip that in sooner?
Probably, but also, fuck you. You're listening to a deep dive
No,
on Casino. Give me a
Not
break.
fuck you.
I
But you
mean-
are listening to a deep dive of a
Hey,
casino.
fuck you. Pay me.
All right,
Fuck
now he
you,
made it
pay
work. So
me.
back to the fuck you. Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck me, fuck you.
Fuck
Talking to me?
This movie has one of the most uses of fuck in the history of ever, so I feel like we should aim for that as a podcast.
Okay. Fuck.
Fuck.
No.
Fuck.
No, it's
Fuck.
got to be natural. Stop it. You think he sat there and just threw fucks in there?
Yes.
No. Stop.
I mean, well, hey,
More fucking.
they did definitely improv a lot of this movie, but we're not going to talk about that
I
yet.
feel like Joe Pesci's second word was fuck.
I mean, that's
It
pretty
was
much every
Mom.
movie he's in,
Fuck,
except
what's
for
the
Home
other
Alone.
one?
Did you know that in Home Alone, he had trouble with that on set while he was shooting and
I
like,
believe
just
it.
constantly cursing?
It's a problem with Sam Jackson
So
too.
that's why if you listen to him freak out in the movie, he's always going, because he can only like half say everything.
I wonder how many times Macaulay Culkin got called a motherfucker.
You little motherfucker, you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
Joe
sorry.
Pesci's insults in this are so long-winded. He puts so many adjectives in there.
I
Like,
gotta say though, no one, unless I'm missing out, I don't think anyone's ever capitalized on the comedic power. Like, sure, maybe Home Alone has, but no one has ever really driven home the comedic value that Joe Pesci can do with some of his deliveries. It's the way he says things sometimes that are hilarious. She's prejudiced. She's
It's awesome.
because he's an amazing actor.
it's just so good.
You fucked my wife? Did I what?
Why would you ask me that?
So good. And then, but also my cousin Vinny, he's pretty funny.
I haven't
See,
seen that
that's what
movie
I
in
have. I haven't seen
years.
it.
Get the fuck out of
I
here.
said maybe it's because I haven't seen it. But
no,
it's
but
just like,
honestly, I don't think he's as funny as he is in either Scorsese, any of the Scorseses or Home
I
Alone.
just like I always get caught up in the and then okay, once I got over,
Russell, you'll see.
once I got over, the N word in the movie. Now I just think about the delivery and the way he looks up at the guy. It's a little funny, not the words.
Oh,
but
you
the way,
mean in
the way,
Casino?
yeah, the way he delivers it. He goes, in the diamonds, and the guy's like, what? He goes, the diamonds. Wow. It's like, Jesus, man.
I forgot that.
You fucking
happened.
suck.
The power of Joe Pesci to get a pass on that.
He doesn't get past. It's just like, I know what's coming to you, little bitch.
I mean, it's the closest thing to a pass anyone's gonna get. It sounds like.
Yes, that's probably the closest you're gonna get. And if Tarantino inevitably creeps his way in, just know you're in for it.
Yeah. Well, Sassy is not doing too unfamiliar a terrain with this movie. He's definitely digging into a lot of the same shit he's dug into
Wait.
plenty of times and will again.
He will.
And
Okay.
the whole thing that he operates within in this movie is the fact that he is going somewhere like unfamiliar as far as the setting and territory that he's in, you know?
I suppose so. Yeah.
The
Un-
casino.
Unfamiliar.
The
yes.
Wild West of the
Modern
floor.
world.
Well, what do they do they just call it the floor? Like at the
Yeah.
casino?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it just simply that, the floor?
Yeah,
think
we're
so.
we're out of New York, and we are now in Nevada.
We're in the desert.
We are
Where
in the
was-
desert.
We're in the
Lot
Wild
of-
West.
Where was Cape Fear set?
I can't remember
I
the
feel like
state.
it was like Midwest,
No, it was like along
Florida?
the Atlantic border, I think.
Florida.
One of the
Jersey?
was it South Carolina or North Carolina? I think it was
Boy.
one of the Carolinas.
We apologize. To,
I'm going to Carolina in my
trying to-
mind.
why are why
I
is my
sang
keyboard-
Caroline No today at work by myself. I
Hey,
was
you
just
met
feeling
James
it.
Taylor.
I did.
Not met him.
The
You
same-
saw him. in
Same
person.
night I met Steven Spielberg and Halle Berry.
Mm-hmm. So wait a minute. What were you saying before I humble bragged for you?
thank you for the humble brag. I
What
don't
was that?
remember- I
What
said,
about the humble brag?
Thank you for the humble brag.
What about the humble brag?
De Niro for the humble brag.
Joe Pesci.
I'm sorry. What were you saying though before I?
You both fucked me up so bad. I don't even remember.
I've tried.
I just
Well,
you know,
we said we were gonna do it. So
Hey, I think we're starting to sound a bit like the movie here for a second. So let's get into the fact that a casino is where this movie takes place.
it is North Carolina and Cape Fear.
there you go.
Guys, I'm glad that I was right. Thank Christ.
You usually are.
That's not on this podcast.
On this podcast,
On this
folks. This is a
podcast. I am the
podcast.
unreliable narrator of this podcast.
We all are.
Okay.
We share that. I
Well,
being
that's-
Frank.
I'm Jesse.
Brandon.
And that's because we're really high. So anyway,
There's that.
I've only been to a casino a handful of times, and I've been to Vegas once, but I was
Really?
young and too young to be able to actually go out onto the floor and gamble and drink and do any of the fun debaucherous things that people do in Vegas. So I figured I'd just ask you guys if you had any casino experiences within your lifetime that were worth talking about, you know? Because it seems to be one of those places where crazy things can happen.
I mean, yeah. I'm Frank.
I'm Jesse.
And I am
We've done it
Brandon.
so many times. I just want people to know.
Yes.
First time I went to a casino was when I was 18, and it was up north at
Soaring Eagle?
no, the other one, Turtle Creek.
Ah.
And it was on a Thanksgiving trip, which is like all the men on the dad's side of the family, more or less. And went to the casino, and I actually won, I think, like $120 on slots. And I was like, cool. Like, this just must be how it goes when you go to the casino. And I remember we were waiting to corral all the old men. And while waiting, I was like, I can throw $5 in a slot machine. And because it was Thanksgiving weekend, they were giving away money. It was half hour, they were giving away $500, and all you had to do was be playing at a machine or a table. And I
Like
was
any machine? Like,
any
was it still up
machine.
to chance?
Yes, and there's people walking around, and they're ringing a bell, and they're just like,
Oh, so they're just randomly picking. It's not like
Yes.
everyone gets $500. So
No.
this was still up to chance for you.
Yes. And as I put in my $5, I'm sitting there. It was a dollar machine, so it was gone in like a second. I was about to stand up, and the guy literally looked at me and motioned his hands down. And I sat down, and then they were like, "We got a winner!" So I got $500 cash in my hand.
So you left with $620.
Yes,
And
sir.
how much did you walk in with?
Actually, nothing,
Did you
because
go
it
to
was
an
my first time
ATM?
at the casino. All the uncles were like, "We'll stake you. Just go have fun."
Well, that's nice.
So I only made money.
Did they make you buy out?
No.
Nice.
We just
Because
went
you were
home.
fucking a kid.
Yeah.
And then
That's cool.
every time I've gone since, I've lost money. I was like, they were getting in good with me. They knew. They saw the youth.
Bro.
They're like, we'll trick him into coming back.
Yeah,
Literally,
that's true. That's
That,
how they do it, because as they say in the movie, you got to win sometimes.
Yeah.
That's
They got
literally-
me.
that
I've
is-
definitely given back more than I won
Ace
that day.
Rothstein wouldn't have wanted you to win that day, though.
Yeah, well.
he would have brought you back that night.
What about you, Brandon?
But what you just said about how every time you go back, it feels like they're taking it away.
No.
Liter-
They are.
It literally is going. It goes into like my whole idea of the casino already. So like I lived in Mount Pleasant for school,
Mhm.
and Mount Pleasant is also the home of the Soaring Eagle because
Mhm,
it's also home of the Chippewa tribe as well as the Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort, and it's actually pretty popular, which I didn't even know at the time of living up there. But seeing as how many people were visiting the casino, and also like the Beach Boys played there at one point.
Lots of famous people.
I think when I was there, Dane Cook was doing a set, I think, which was weird. But so lived there next to the casino, and like throughout the entirety of my freshman year of college, I was like, why would I go? I think I only went to like hang out with my mom once because she was up there with like her bingo group. Sorry to disdain my mom like that. I know no one wants to find out they're in a bingo group, but she's not old, I promise. But
Hey, bingo's fun at any age, right?
my sophomore
No.
year, my lease is about to end on my apartment, and I'm moving back home 2.5 hours away, and like all of a sudden, like all the bills just like came, bro. And I think not all of a sudden, I definitely just like didn't spend my money correctly, and it was looking pretty bleak. Like I would have had enough money to like be okay, but like I would have been dirt broke when I came back home, and I didn't have a job lined up yet. So it wasn't looking pretty good, but it was towards the end of our run there. So, all the roomies are trying to have a good time. And, my good friend and roommate, Eli, his like family came up to visit him. Eli. His family came up to visit him, and they went to the casino. And this is the night before I went. They went to the casino. What?
Nothing. I think I was just trying to remember if you told me this. Keep going.
The night before I went, they went to the casino, and Eli came home with like $130, but his grandpa won really big and won like $500 at this like penny slot machine. So the next day, like Eli was like, "Yeah, dude, like let's go there. Like we can smoke cigarettes indoors, and like we don't have to fucking like be outside and shit.
That's
Like
pretty
it's
nice.
cool." And I was like, "Yeah, that's nice." I feel like at this point, the motivation to go to the casino was like, "Yeah, I can drink and smoke in there now." But before we were 21, it was like, "Well, we can smoke indoors, and that's fucking nice for a change." So we went there, and at that point, Like I always had the idea that when you go to the casino, you're not gonna win anything because like the casino wouldn't work if you won every time, and I didn't think I was gonna be one of the lucky ones to win. So I just did whatever looked fun. I just like Eli gave me the rundown. He was like, just don't go to the tables, and I was like, got it. Don't go to any tables. So I just like started playing like the games and like was just pressing buttons and shit. And the next thing I know, my $5 turned into $20, and that $20 turned into like $82. And I was like, oh, this is dope. Like we should go, dude. Like I don't want to fucking lose out. Like I got fucking $60. This is great. So we buy out. I get my little coupon, and we're about to dip. And he's like, "Hey, bro, I want to go back to the machines that me and my grandpa were on yesterday. Like this is the one I won on. You should sit at the one my grandpa won on. Like he won $500 from that." And I was like, "Yeah, I feel like that means that this machine won't win."
It's already used its jackpot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I put in like I just go balls to the wall. I'm like, I'll put in the whole thing. And actually, no, it's not that I wanted to. It's that it was like a little barcode. So when you scanned it, just took the whole amount. So like I'm just pressing buttons and I'm playing and I'm losing and I'm losing and I'm losing, and it feels like a little because it's a penny slot, but I was doing like 5 and 10 and like 20. And I was like, I just something, and very quickly the $82 turned into $6. And I was like, oh, that's how they get you. And like I was very sad and dejected. And like Eli was chilling because he was just using his money that he got from the casino the previous day.
This doesn't have a happy ending.
Oh, wait. So there's a $6. And I'm like, hey,
Okay.
bro, we should just go. And he was like, all right, like let me like cash out this machine, blah, blah, blah. And then I looked at the machine and I looked down and I was like, fuck it, one time for the one time. Pulled it and won $250. Ran out. That was literally like the exact amount of money I needed to just be comfortable for the next like couple of weeks. It was perfect. I was
That's
like, I don't know
awesome.
how that worked, but I have not spent money in a casino since, and I never will. Because
Probably a
they
good
will
move.
they will get at least $250 back.
The only smart thing to play in a casino is poker because it's not their money, so they don't care. They're just facilitating you being there. Hoping some casinos you have to buy drinks, some you don't. I think Vegas you don't actually.
Well, at least in
I feel
Vegas,
like
you
in
can
Vegas-
take drinks out in the open streets.
Right.
That's nuts.
Really?
Yeah, you can just walk around
It's
bar
the
to
Wild
bar.
West. It
The
still
Wild
is.
West,
It's
yeah.
different, but it's
Well, it's corporatized.
yeah.
We'll talk about
Have
it.
you? So did any specific memory last from, or did you have?
No, that was it.
And did any specific memories from when your time there as a small child, or no?
Oh, from Vegas?
Yeah.
Well, I the only memory that sticks is that I saw the Amazing Jonathan perform there when I was young, and because the Amazing Jonathan is a comedian magician.
You see the guy in the dinosaur suit?
No.
Okay, then I have no idea.
He's
Who-
very funny, actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I didn't know much about what he did at the time. I just remember because my dad went to high school with the Amazing
Oh yeah.
Jonathan.
Oh wow.
I always forget about that.
And they were good buds. And there's a couple Amazing Jonathan documentaries that are out there. I know there's one on Hulu, but I know the one is kind of intentionally supposed to be like bridging the line between fiction and reality. So I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, I've never seen it, but Nathan Fielder did a Q&A with the director and him after one of the screenings, ironically. So that got me curious. But the Amazing Jonathan is just like kind of a crude comedian whose jokes either go wrong or they're like really like weird and gross and scary. Like his most famous one, I think, is when he takes 5 razor blades, swallows them all, takes a string, swallows that, and then pulls his razor up out of his throat and like displays all the razors after. Like it's a cool trick, but also he has like a bunch of blood that he's doing like coming out of his mouth while he's doing it the whole time. And he's like, "No, when I'm doing this at kids' birthday parties, I usually tell them, don't do this at home. Go to your neighbors, somewhere else."
Oh jeez.
So that kind of comedy.
I think
like
it's
it.
funny.
But he's very crass, and I remember he told my dad because he was on the phone with him, like, "Hey, we're gonna come to the show, but like we got our kids. Like, should we bring them?" I was like 9 at the time, I think, and he was like, "Oh yeah, people bring their kids all the time."
Were
And
there a
then-
bunch of kids there?
No, we were definitely the only children. And we were close to the front row. And before his show, I don't know, because Frank and I actually saw The Amazing Jonathan a few years ago. But
When we lived at the apartment.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, we saw him here in the home state instead of Vegas. But
Yeah, I didn't fly out.
but when we were there at the original show, he has like a thing at the beginning of his show where he like has a camera like surveying the audience, and like it'll zoom in on certain people, and then he'll write like a little funny thing, like kind of making a jab at like how he's perceiving what they look like or something, right? So then he gets over to my dad and my little brother, who was 7 years old at the time,
Oh.
and it says "Cradle Robber," and I was like, "Oh
That's hilarious.
I didn't know what that meant at the time. And I remember I probably asked, like, why? What? They're like, oh no.
Don't
And
ask
then
questions.
The entire show was nothing but fuck. And I was crying. I was laughing so hard. 9-year-old boy.
Yeah,
like,
that's comedy
so
gold as a
funny."
child.
I mean,
It still
hey,
is.
To some extent, probably, yes.
Pretty sure I saw the South Park movie when I was like 9, and I thought it was the best thing ever.
I still think the planes, trains, and automobiles fuck scene is like one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
I've never seen it.
Ah, man.
The bigger, better, uncut.
No. I've seen South Park movie. I've never seen
Planes, trains, and automobiles.
Ah,
Have you seen Planes, Trains?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, we're gonna cry one day. November when it
Steve
comes
Martin and John Candy.
Yes, that is
Okay,
correct.
thank
John
God.
Hughes. It's actually my favorite John Hughes movie.
John Candy sounds familiar. I feel like we've talked about him before.
Breakfast Club. Or Ferris Bueller.
Wait,
Wait,
being
who
the
is he?
favorite?
Yeah.
Who is he
Oh,
in
but
Ferris?
dude, you gotta see it.
Okay.
Who is he in Ferris?
No,
way
John
I-
Hughes made Breakfast Club, Ferris
Oh,
Bueller's
he's a
Day Off,
dir-
and
he is a-
Trains, Planes, and Automobiles.
He's a director.
Yes, sir.
Got it.
Hey,
Yes,
it's
sir.
planes, trains, and automobiles.
I have
That's what I
seen.
said.
You said trains, planes, and automobiles.
I have seen
Mm.
Ferris Bueller and the other one you named.
Breakfast Club.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Because of the fisting.
But
The
anyway,
what?
At the end, when he's.
puts his fist into the air for the record.
Yeah, just when you say the fisting.
Yeah.
It's like, what fucking movie?
I
did
didn't
you
know we
watch?
were talking about society. I thought we were talking about
Well,
the Breakfast Club.
we were, but we should talk about society because that's what Scorsese tries
Well,
to talk about in
No.
his film.
We
I
should
mean-
talk about casinos.
I do
Quit.
mean the movie society, not literal society, just for the record also. But
I thought you were saying like society's fisting us. That's
Cinephilia is a disease.
we've said that before.
what's happening. Are we okay?
I don't know.
Are we high enough?
I
Probably
mean-
not. I have a pen.
I was going to casually ask if that was okay.
What?
The
Passing the
pen?
pen around. But I've only really done any gambling at a casino in Canada.
Really?
When I turned 19, me and a friend were like, "Oh, we're going over there, and we're getting drunk." And we didn't actually. We only ended up drinking one beer each because we were both just like nervous.
You're like, isn't this still
I
technically
had never
illegal?
because that was at the point before I'd ever even tried alcohol before, like recreationally in any sense. So I was like kind of nervous, like ooh, I don't know, this is weird. And then like also just venturing over the border, and then getting over the border was scary because everyone always tells you that the Canadian border is super nice and easy, and it's always great going into Canada, but coming back, it's always very hard. So I was already scared enough for coming back into the U.S. going into Canada, had no expectations that I was needing to be frightened for the Canadian experience. Not to talk shit about the Canada as a whole, but just this particular person who ran this particular border entry station. He really gave me the runaround. I pulled up, and he must have said like identification, but he said like, I don't. And I was like, excuse me? He went, identification. And I went, oh, yeah. And I passed it to him, and then he goes, citizenship. And I was like, what? Citizenship. And I was like, United States. And he's like, what about your partner over there? And I was like, same
Partner.
thing. And he was like, okay, what is your business here in Canada? And I was like, well, we've never been before, and we're just here to see, what Windsor's all about. We didn't really make any plan. We just wanted to visit Windsor.
We're here to
And
get
he was like,
wasted.
and he literally said, that's not good enough. And I went, excuse me? Probably didn't actually say excuse me, but I thought it.
I
And
feel like that was
like-
the look on your
and he
face
was
for
like,
sure.
No, and he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, there's so many things to do in Windsor. What are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. We haven't figured it out yet. And I knew that we planned on potentially hitting up the casino. So I just said, I don't know. We're going to the casino. And he was like, yeah, all right, figures. And then he just let us go eventually. He's like, have a good day. And it was actually pretty easy, like driving around and stuff over there. Cause I've only ever been to Canada 2 times now, where I've like driven around and stuff from the US into Canada. But I went to Caesars. Caesars, that's right on the river there, and we tried to do the slot machines, but like I couldn't figure out how to make them work with like the currency and the system that they had. Like I've seen American slot machines. I know how those work. I don't even have to use one to fucking understand how it works. Whereas fucking for some reason at the time also, I might have just been nervous about being in the environment and like all that other shit.
I think
But
it was.
I was just like, I can't do this. And so was my friend. And then we left, had a beer, got really scared about trying to go back over the border, thinking that like, oh, they're going to know that we drank. And then we got literally pulled in. They searched our car like at the American border. And we like had to sit like in the office, like waiting for our car to get searched. and then we came out after, and they were like, "Yeah, okay, you're good. Go home." So that's my casino experience.
That literally feels like it got pulled out of an episode of like a coming of age story movie where it's just like, what are
It's
you
like
doing?
every stupid move I could have made, I
You
did.
curb your enthusiasm.
God damn it!
Only if like earlier I or someone stashed like weed in your car to be like, hey, can you hold on to this?
You know,
And
funny
you're
enough,
like, sure.
Funny enough, I'm pretty sure actually now that I think about it, maybe I had drank before at that point. We were just nervous about something, but I remember vacuuming out my car because I was like, oh no, like, what if they smell the weed in there or something? So moral of the story is, folks, if you're going to go to Canada, make sure you know what you're fucking doing when you go over there.
I mean, that's a pretty good.
And then when you come back, don't tell the fucking United States Border Patrol that you just had a beer.
You can just do what I do.
I was just like, I just got to tell them at the very least, like, I don't know, I'm worried if they breathalyze me and I had alcohol in my system. They're like, like, ticket for you, but
it's illegal now.
DUI.
You're crossing the border.
So
Just
crazy.
do what I do. I pretend to be asleep every time I've had to cross the
Especially
Canadian
if
border.
you're at the
At the
wheel.
driver's seat, yes, where I'm the one that's doing all the work.
Huh? What do you want? I was unconscious.
What's the problem, man?
It's worked for me every time.
His name's Ralph, man.
So
Sassy.
Sassy. We've done enough talk about gambling and casinos.
In Canada.
Let's talk about fucking Ace Rothstein.
Ace Rothstein and how he makes some gambles in this movie.
I think that that's pretty good life advice for everything, though, and I think Ace Rothstein would agree. The don't know what you're gonna say. What'd you say? Fuck it. Never mind. Cut it all.
God damn it, Frank. Were
I
you
was
trying to
excited
quote?
to see where
Were
you
you
were
trying to
going.
quote Jesse?
Yeah.
No, what did I say?
Yeah.
I
You
said,
said something about-
always go to Canada with a plan. Like, know what you're
Yeah.
doing before you go
That
to Canada.
applies to everything. You should always have a plan, man.
No, hey,
Yeah,
listen.
dude.
Ace Rothstein has 3 rules.
Uh-huh.
Or no, he says
Yeah.
there are
There's
3
three
ways
ways
of
of
going
doing
about
things.
doing something.
Money, music.
right way, the wrong way.
No.
This
What?
Jimmy Doyle.
God damn it.
I mean, it's virtually the same thing.
What?
I actually think, as far as De Niro's characters are concerned, this one is the closest to Jimmy Doyle. The only difference being is that this is the movie from Jimmy Doyle's perspective.
Okay.
This is if Liza Minnelli didn't have autonomy.
No, because it's also
Yeah.
from his perspective in New York Near too. I think it
You know,
breaks out of it a
Nyark.
few times, and obviously
Yeah.
it does in this too, because we see Pesci. You said early in the movie, Frank, how they had the dueling narration contradicting what each other were saying relatively quickly
Mhm.
into the runtime.
I
They
feel like
both
you can,
had different views of the same situation.
I
Yes.
feel like so Liza Minnelli, who's the female actress in this?
Sharon Stone.
So I feel like Sharon Stone would follow Jimmy Doyle in his movie, but Liza Minnelli would never have gotten involved with Ace Rothstein, and I think that's the difference. But the De Niro character is the same. I think what makes the movies different is how the female protagonist reacts.
Well,
I don't even
Jimmy's
think he's
al-
the same. But,
yeah,
you know,
Jimmy's more quote unquote charming.
No.
Like
and unhinged.
no,
like-
I see.
I think De Niro's way more.
He-
like,
okay, you're right.
Okay, but yeah,
Contained.
De
Yeah,
Niro's
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of. I'm.
chaotic.
He's
Jimmy Doyle.
he's a
is
caged
chaotic.
animal. In
We'll get
this.
into this a
Yeah.
little bit more, but I definitely say he's more of like I can't think of a word better than punk, but like I think of punk because
Jimmy
he
Doyle.
yeah, no
Ace Rothstein.
Ace Rothstein
Oh.
because he's a lot of talk, but there's several points in the movie where he doesn't act, and
Well, like what?
most of the time. Every time Nikki steps up to him, he's like a big tough guy, and then Nikki's like, "I'm being serious," and he's like, "All right, man, chill out." Specifically when they go into the restaurant, and he's fucking pissed, and he's like ready to beat the fuck out of Sharon Stone, and Nikki just like, "Hey, man, I don't care how pissed you are, like I'll fuck you up."
Well, it's
He doesn't say that, but like De Niro's whole body language changes. Like, all right, but then he gets to Sharon Stone, he's like, "I'll fucking beat your ass." Like, I'll fucking, but he's not
Interesting.
doing anything because he knows fucking Nikki is there. And I don't know. I feel like Jimmy Doyle doesn't hold back unless Liza Minnelli's like, "Fucking come on, let's go, you idiot, let's go."
Well, I think that it's interesting only because that Scorsese said
I don't like the word punk.
in
Keep going.
talking about. Well, I think that word has a different like image that comes into your mind than what like I know you mean, like almost a very similar thing where he's sort of this like rebel, right? Is that a better word for it?
For Ace,
Yes. Like where he's just kind of doing
No. He's trying to say like putting on a tough guy exterior, but like isn't actually.
yeah,
Okay.
And
like only
I don't
like
know how to. What is the word for that? Like fake.
like the facade.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot you can see.
No, there's definitely a term for like a
is a
man
term.
who acts tough. I mean, a tough guy. Like,
Well,
what do
what's
you
up,
think? You're a tough guy?
Well, I feel like in every movie when they ask you if you're a tough guy, the guy ends up being a tough guy. He like beats you up. It's usually the pro tag.
A poser.
Yeah,
A poser.
he's a fucking.
I found how to tell a real tough guy from a poser.
Next episode is actually going to be an advice podcast. How to tell a tough guy from a poser. Nikki,
after-
tough guy. Poser, Ace Rothstein.
Well, see, that's an interesting thing where like Scorsese talks about how that was something in making this movie that was important to him. The idea of their relationship, the two of them as friends,
Yeah.
and how it operates where Ace Rothstein is a man who is not actually in the mob,
No.
and he's not even the owner of a casino. In fact, he's really just
Like the manager.
well, virtually he runs the show and technically he's in charge, but he doesn't have the real legal title.
Right.
And I think that he exudes the power and prowess that he does to lord that over the title. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But before I go down any more character detail, I wanted to get out at the very start of the whole casino conversation before we really go into it, just Scorsese's inception for this project, like why he ended up making this. Because I think it's interesting that it starts here, like for Scorsese, that apparently Nicholas Pileggi, who gave Scorsese Goodfellas originally, also co-wrote this with him. This is their second collaboration together. He gave him an article from a newspaper about a couple having a domestic dispute on their front lawn at 7:30 in the morning. That was the article. And then he read further, read deeper, who were these people, and the more he started expanding out from that one article is where the entire story of Casino unfolds. So I found it interesting that is, of course, where it starts in a place that clearly links to Sesse's themes. Like that scene in particular was a very striking one in that I feel like you could lump that with a lot of other scenes in Scorsese's canon, almost like a montage of people screaming at each other.
I do think that he has formed a very strange divorce trilogy.
Yeah.
Of like Cape Fear, Age of Innocence, and then culminating in Casino. Like it does feel like he's
Goodfellas is the precursor.
Right. He's had similar types of relationships that he's explored, as we've pointed out with New York, and Goodfellas, definitely. But like I feel like these three, like that is almost the overhanging emotion of all three.
Yeah.
And it like, so as soon as you said that, I'm like, makes sense. That's like the vibe I was pulling from.
Yeah. And I remember even when you were reading that bit of information about his marriages and his recent divorce during Age of Innocence, knowing that Casino was next and going, oh my fucking God.
It's
just
crazy.
Like you were working on it.
I didn't even make the connection till just now. I don't even know exactly what it is you guys said. But, you know, fucking what is the name of Goodfellas? The main guy.
Henry Hill.
Henry Hill, you know, ends his sort of, you know, his rise with being like coked out and paranoid and shit. And it's like we've talked like several times about Scorsese's drug habits, and never once did I see the beaver. Never once did I fucking even think about how that affected his love life and how that might be reflecting in Goodfellas too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's wild. But there's definitely like a through line with us, like his tumultuous relationships. But after this one, he gets married for the last time, right?
Yeah, 4 years after Casino.
We've talked about that, yeah.
And I assume Kundun is gonna fit in nicely of the like calm, reflective piece after these like
he's
really intense movies about this like similar subject area.
Yeah.
So now he's like, all right, I gotta calm down and cleanse the palate.
And if you haven't listened to our Age of Innocence podcast or aren't as familiar with
our Age of Innocence what?
Podcast, apologies.
It's okay.
De Niro.
Joe Pesci.
All right.
Nice.
So
I panicked. I was like, fuck, what do I say?
if you haven't seen Age of Innocence, it's definitely in the camp of being as emotionally poignant as these movies end up trying to reach at the like physical level in Casino and Cape Fear, whereas I think Age of Innocence tackles it from a more psychological perspective.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah.
Yes.
I actually feel
It's
like
the calm
Cape
before
Fear
the
is
storm.
kind of
well, both are storms, yeah. It's the eye of the storm.
Has both in there.
But one of them is not good.
Well,
Not fun.
which
Not
one?
cool.
Oh, you're talking about Age of Innocence?
Yeah.
Yes, boring, period, stuffy drama.
Yeah, but
I like it.
definitely the essence of what you're talking about is there.
But I mean, hey, technically Casino is also a period film. So
And technically, I don't like it. Just
I mean,
kidding.
that's fair.
I was trying to think of how to ape off what you just said about Age of Innocence.
Well, I mean, hey, I do think that's important. We've talked about it. How does everyone feel about Casino? Before I will just say from the jump that I think it's going to become obvious over the course of the next like couple of minutes that I love this movie and I think it's great. But I know that the opinions aren't the same with everybody, so I'd like to hear about.
Yeah, this is one of our differing ones. One of our few diversions.
Yeah, I'm definitely more like in the neutral zone where like I finished this one, been thinking about it and stuff, and I definitely appreciate.
Should we be doing this now? Go ahead. You appreciate.
I thought we usually do because then that informs the rest of the pod.
Okay.
I definitely appreciate how the thought processes that Goodfellas gave me after the movie, and for Casino, I definitely appreciated the more not political, but just like more
political,
like political business aspect of the whole idea of the mob. I liked the way that those things were presented here, but at the end of the day, I do just like if I were thinking about it, I would put it on the same level as Goodfellas, and the only bump that I would give Goodfellas is that it made me think about the things that I thought about. But that also might have just been inevitable. But I will always link it to Goodfellas, so that gives it a little bump. But I'll just be honest, like I didn't dislike this movie any more or less than like Goodfellas. Like, but when I finished it, I was like, this definitely just feels like the same, but just a different version. And maybe I like the nuances of this version a little bit more, but it definitely doesn't leave me with anything like inevitably Goodfellas did. That's how I feel.
I figure I don't know how to like sum it up into like a small thought. I feel like we'll get into it over the course of this whole pod, at least a bit. I don't really care for this movie that much. I think it's like a third of a good movie, a third of like an amazing movie, and then 2/3 of an okay to bad one. But I already have done a lot of thinking since watching it, and I understand like I feel like anything negative I could say against Casino, like somebody could take the words and just plant them against Goodfellas, and I would go, yes, I understand. Like, they are very similar movies, but they do have distinct differences, too, in things they're even trying to accomplish. But I just, like, this one doesn't work for me. I can summarize it in one sentence to maybe kick it off. I feel like most of the complaints I hear about Scorsese movies, this is the one movie where I'm like, I get it. Like, for the first time, at least. Maybe it's going to happen again. And I can't think right now if it will. But this is the first time where I'm like, I understand where people are usually coming from. And I feel like that is almost an important thing to have, because I feel like we all have thus far into the career had a movie that, like, didn't click for us, but could still acknowledge, like, the potential merit in it. And this one just is unfortunately mine, I guess. Thus far. I'm sure that there will be a few more that I don't like. I'm nervous about Shutter Island.
I'm curious to hear you elaborate about the things that, because I think I have my ideas as to how I'd imagine you're perceiving that idea, the criticisms lobbed at Scorsese about his violence and about his portrayal of women and about his
style over substance.
Yes, and then also the excessive style that's
right.
obviously at the forefront
Which
here.
I do think is appropriate here. Obviously, it's a movie about Vegas. Like, I understand, but for the first time, it felt like the stylistics weren't motivated beyond that. And maybe that is just a preference thing, where it's like it's not clicking for me as well as it has in the past.
Bit of a dumb question. What do you guys mean by style? Are you talking like camera movies, talking shots? Or are you talking about just like the movie itself?
Well, definitely,
Yes.
I think he's referring to the visual style and like the songs and the jukebox nature of it and the candy colored palette.
This does feel, I think you might have said this after we watched it, and I apologize if you did, that this feels more like even more coked up than Goodfellas does.
Yes, I did say
even
that.
though Goodfellas, like, I mean, there is coke in this movie too, but
Goodfellas,
it's way more prevalent. Yeah.
Yes.
And I do think this feels like, if anything, this style-wise feels like Goodfellas cranked to 11. And I don't like that extra push toward 11. Like, it doesn't do as much for me, even though I understand in the grand scheme, like, it is trying to capture the whirlwind that is Vegas. Like I do. It's like
Well,
I
and
get it.
I get that too, though, because I can totally see why anyone would find that to be a bit much, especially given the fact this is material he's covered already, kind of.
In a way, yes.
Well,
Like
I think thematically, the way, because Scorsese talks about how the biggest thing in all of these movies is the characters, and that's the thing that interests him most.
And I think these dynamics and specifics even have been explored in more efficient ways, in my opinion. But I do understand, like,
well, I remember even saying that the brilliance in casting Joe Pesci in this part right off the gate when we started watching it is in the idea that we've already seen him in Goodfellas and we already know his explosive personality when he works with Martin Scorsese, or at least the most recent time that he did. So the audience already has that innate, like, oh God, what's he gonna do? And it's basically the same character, but cranked to 11.
Yeah.
Just want to get that out there.
I mean, do you guys want me to keep ragging so then you can get into things you love about it?
I mean,
I was
by all
lead
means.
I feel bad. I do. Like, because I think I understand it's a preference thing. Like, I think about.
I get the ragging in this movie particularly only because I do agree that the preference really stands to reason with this one and all of these movies for the most part.
Yeah.
I even thought that part of the reason Casino might click for me so well is because of the fact that for years, actually, leading up to seeing it for the first time last year, Frank had always painted it as not great. So I was always never excited or eager to check it out. And it was 3 hours long.
Yeah.
And Scorsese is another filmmaker. I know we've kind of touched on this before, but just when we were younger, didn't hit the way he's been hitting recently.
Yes.
So I didn't think of him as one of my guys, quote, as much as I do now. And the movie that I definitely had loved the most of his at the time was Taxi Driver. That was the one that clicked. And I know that you had Goodfellas at the time, too, as being the one you'd hold up on the pedestal.
I did. And I feel like I watched Casino for the first time. And I've only seen it once before this, and it was a long time ago. But I feel like it wasn't too long after seeing Goodfellas, and I just remember thinking it was discount Goodfellas. It's just like, what the fuck?
And I can say that that's valid in quite a few ways.
And I went in trying to clear my expectation of that. And the thing I was worried about was how it fits into his filmography, like so soon, even after Goodfellas. It's like,
it's an odd jump.
I wish that this is one that I think even more than any, it's like I probably should view this outside of the filmography, like in a vacuum.
You know, I'm definitely being in more of this middle position and just not really knowing, you know, like how to verbalize like the feelings that I have about it. I've been so curious about seeing like what feels like the two halves of just like the thinking about the movie, like what do you love about it? Like I'm really just trying to discern the difference between this and Goodfellas, and I feel like hearing what you both have to say is definitely going to help me in terms, so I might end up being on either which side by the end of it because I feel like I am definitely in the middle. So fight for me and advocate for me.
Don't frame it like a debate.
It's not because you know no one tried to convince Jesse to like New York, and no one definitely tried to convince me to like Age of Innocence.
Well, there was no doing that.
Dude, but like you were positive the whole pod, and like we're still actively engaging in our conversation.
Yeah, because I think that no matter what, we can recognize, you know, these movies are good and have their merit. But what I was gonna say was that I was gonna ask if you remembered when you saw Casino for the first time, how soon had you seen Goodfellas?
I can't remember for sure, but it wasn't long after. It like. I
That's
want
the
to
thing
say
that we
within the
talked
same
about.
year. I want to say within the same year.
I don't know which episode, but pretty early on, we did discuss like, how do you feel about, you know, watching movies like this in a sequence? How can it be good? How can it be bad?
Well, it felt like he really did start to switch it up every single movie, like after Raging Bull when we expressed that concern, or even King of Comedy. It was one of those two where we brought up like the fatigue already. And then I feel like after that, he really starts hitting a period where he's just going buck wild all over the place. I mean, I guess he's kind of always been doing that, but even in his like portrayals of the protagonist. And I think Casino does have value in that respect, that this really does. I'm trying to frame this correctly. That I said early on while watching it, I'm like, so this is just about filmmaking. And it feels
we
like
said that when Ace Rothstein laid out his mantra of there are
three ways.
There are three ways of doing something. There's my way, or there's the right way, the wrong way, and there's the way that I do it.
Yeah.
And I think that right there says it's almost like a director's statement from Scorsese, where it's like,
Yes.
sure, there's the rule book of how to make movies, and sure, there's the rule book of how to not make movies. And then there's the fact that I've read both of those, and I know how to do both of them just as well as anybody else, and I
Mhm.
can. And if you're going to be here, you're going to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's almost interesting that we talked about briefly in the Age of Innocence pod, how this movie is a condemnation of Hollywood in a way, where I almost think that if anything, Kevin Pollak's character is almost representative of like a studio or the producer, the person who's literally
Well, the
just
mob.
that right. Well, the Kevin Pollak is the owner of the casino. He's the owner proper.
Right.
So he's the one that is the face of the
Yeah.
Tangiers, because that's the only one that he owns in this. But I think we haven't talked about the historical elements of this, but we'll get into it. Just remind me later how there's the real guy owned 4 casinos, not just one. But the Tangiers is a fictional casino.
I think the movie making comparisons are almost undeniable, and he's proven time and time again that his like most masterful skill as a director, I think, is creating a film out of the world of the protagonist's headspace. And this movie very clearly is from Ace's headspace and like the way he controls information.
Yes.
And I do think that shit is really smart, and I can acknowledge that. But
Well, I think it's interesting how calculated the movie itself is, where I'm like, I think it's one thing to be stylish, where we talked about Mean Streets on how stylish it is, but how sloppy it is at the same time. And it's Scorsese picking up the pieces and still learning how to properly make a film
Mhm.
or, put one together in a way that people would accept as being clean, right? Or
Mhm.
just like skilled, proficient. Casino is that. Like, it is him taking every bit of style he's ever exuded in any of his movies, cranking it up all the way, and executing it with a bravado and a confidence that I've really not seen from a Sessi, I feel like, up to this point.
I mean, Goodfellas.
Goodfellas has that, but it still has that Mean Streets feel to me, where it's like,
See,
it
I
still
don't
feels
think
like
so.
I know that it's still all well choreographed and like all well, like technically an incredibly well made movie. But I think Casino is even more obviously in your face in that regard, or at least I just prefer the way that it's done in that, and how fast paced everything is, and how there's literally no second that you can't be looking at the screen or paying attention where there's not information being given to you. And I think that playing into that idea that it's all coming from Ace Rothstein's headspace is curious in that, well, there's Coke energy, but Ace is definitely clean.
Mhm.
Like, Ace doesn't even drink, I don't think. Don't they make a point of that in the movie?
I'm not sure. That sounds right, though.
I think, but I could be wrong. Like, I think that he just didn't really do much as far as drugs, for sure, anyway.
Mhm.
But he's level-headed most of the movie, and we do exit his perspective quite a few times. But I feel like most of the time, especially in those first like 45 minutes, where the movie is just a rundown of how Vegas works and how Ace and Nikki operate themselves within it, and then all of a sudden he sees Ginger and things change.
So that's the hour of the movie that I like the most. And I think it's also, ironically, the hour that's most similar to Goodfellas, where it is just the rundown of the
The world, yeah.
opposed to the specifics of the characters. And I just like these characters beyond their function don't click for me at all. And I think that's going to be the baseline of my problems. Like the moment I start to verbalize, it's like I completely like I don't know how else to say other than like academically understand the value, but it just like doesn't resonate. For
Well,
some
hey,
reason.
numbers are numbers. If you don't feel them, they're just numbers.
And that's what this movie feels like
Yeah.
to me. I think it's lacking emotionality and like a deep humanistic quality. I think it's it feels to me surface level. It feels like everything is surface level. Like even the things it starts to dive into, I'm like, I just want more from this movie. It feels like personally. And I think that's what it can be. Like specifically how the politics and government get involved inside of Vegas. It feels like it like touches the surface and doesn't really go deep. Or Sharon Stone's whole identity as a character, which like I stop and that's where I'm like, I understand from Ace's perspective, and that's why it doesn't give her the time of day. But she feels
I think
so
it does, but I think it portrays her in a way more unfavorable light. And I think that there is danger in somebody watching that. And like you guys were saying at certain points in the movie, like, well, Ace is technically in the right here. if you're thinking about it, about certain situations. I can't remember which one specifically, but
He always feels okay. So it's not even though just even like the treatment of her character, it's lack of depth to her character that the movie like affords time to give. Like I feel like you get a much better sense of Karen in Goodfellas and like her choices and her like personality in her own life. And it's probably because they give her voiceover in Goodfellas, where here she doesn't get a voiceover. Instead, Pesci gets it as the secondary voiceover. And it's like, I understand the function of that and why you would choose to do that, but it just doesn't work as well to me, where everything she's doing just felt so phony and forced. And everything that I was watching is like, is that the point? Like literally fine. It just wasn't working for me. And
well,
then
I think there's the phony and forced element in the fact that her
the
whole
relationship
with Ace is phony and
I understand,
bullshit.
but I just feel like that's what I mean. It's like I get it. Like I really do. I just it doesn't. I think this also feels the most sympathetic Scorsese has been towards one of his protagonists, and maybe that I could say is a personal misunderstanding for sure. Like that, I will concede that might just be a me thing, but I just this whole time I'm like, it doesn't really feel like he's judging Ace at all, and it feels like he's on his side beyond just the movie being framed from his headspace. I feel like Scorsese might connect with him more than most of his protagonists, actually, because it doesn't feel very judgmental of him in any elemental way. And because of that, I feel like it gets its points.
Well, Sassy said in an
askewed.
interview that he thought that he felt he should have made the character more outwardly evil, I guess, for
Well,
lack of a better word.
I guess my
And-
question is how does Henry Hill do that?
Well, Henry Hill is kind of a likable character. Like Henry Hill has things about him that humanize him right off the jump and
Yeah.
make you interested in following his plight. Like starting with him as a child, I think really helps, because I think that automatically puts you in a position of like, wow, he doesn't know, and he's just seeing this world for what it is on the outside. Like he's not seeing all the craziness and all the fucked up shit that goes on the inside. But then over the course of the movie, slowly starts to get revealed to it, and then eventually ends up leaving. But obviously, that's different. And
Now-
I think that's part of the thing too about the Karen thing. Whereas I'm like, the Sharon Stone character like doesn't have the same level of focus as Karen does, nor the same drive in the story or the narrative. But I think her role here is still very incredibly crucial, and I don't think her performance is bad by any stretch. I think it's really, really, really great, but I don't know necessarily if I'd rank it above like other Scorsese performances, like toward the top. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
I actually think, weirdly enough, this is another movie where Pesci comes through like clutch, and I think De Niro is getting closer to his Frank Sheeran, where he's just becoming like the best scene partner
Mhm.
ever. Like every scene that De Niro is in this movie, he is so assured in what is going on. Like he never seems to have a moment of doubt in like as far as his performance, not about the character, because surely
Mhm.
the character does many times.
Now I'm thinking it could just be a made up thing in my head of like I feel like I can't explain it, but it feels like Scorsese is simultaneously judging while exploring the world in Goodfellas, but he's not doing as much here, at least in regards to Henry and Ace. And that could just be my own personal thing. Like I can't think of a way to support that theory. And I think it's because this movie I think Goodfellas is more focused and Casino's more broad. And I think as a whole, I like Scorsese when he's more focused. Irishman is a very clear example. Well, no, actually, it's a very focused movie. It's just a large story, and that's different. I think he's best when he's contained to a smaller thing, which Goodfellas like is just about these couple dudes in the mob, and that's like it. And this is like feels like it's trying to encompass Vegas and Hollywood metaphorically, and also his own stuff, and also these interpersonal relationships. And
Similar to
I don't
Age of
know.
Innocence, it feels like how this
That's fair.
society is affecting these characters.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
how the
Yeah.
world around them is like, because the same thing, we don't necessarily get a history lesson, quote, in Age of Innocence about 1870s New York City.
No,
And
we
we
get a lot of info.
We do get a lot of info, but I think we get a lot of info in Casino too.
You do.
But I do agree that it definitely doesn't provide, like, given the 3-hour runtime as well, like the same amount of detail as far as the actual mechanics of the politics were
Mhm.
concerned, because I think that maybe that's something that would have interested you more,
It
like in
would've.
this movie, if they would have dived into the analytics of all of that, right?
I think I do, because I think he spends a lot of time trying to develop these relationships between these people, and I feel like at the end of the movie, I still didn't have a grasp on any of the people. Like, I don't feel like I know them like I have in almost every other Scorsese movie. And again, I think it can always be chalked up to it's just a me thing, and we should probably get off me harping on negatives and
Well,
start working our way towards positives.
Do you think those characters know themselves?
No, yes, I don't know.
Or do you, like, that's what I mean, like, I
Like-
don't know, like, I think at least you could make the arguments for Sharon Stone, at least, and Pesci, the way that they operate within the movie, that they are but then the Ace too, because we are in his perspective. I get clouded when I think about it, being like, oh, this is the world, this is the observation of the world, but it's not the observation of the world, it's the observation of the world through Ace's eyes.
But that almost back and forth is what troubles me, because even in Goodfellas, it's like, even though you have Henry as a very specific catalyst, I feel like it's never not from Scorsese's outside perspective.
Interesting.
But that, again,
But I
that
think
maybe that's
that comes,
bullshit.
no, but I think that comes from Scorsese's personal life, being a kid and seeing,
Mm.
because isn't it true that he almost could have gotten
Mhm.
involved in the mob?
From what I understand, from
Okay.
stories I've heard.
So that's where I'm
he
like,
has a more
that's-
closer connection.
I think that that's definitely a closer connection, not just in the fact that it's straight up Italian mob stuff in that movie. But I mean, obviously, you have your Irishman and you have a couple, and I mean, Irishman being Jimmy Conway, not the movie, but other people that are within the faction of the mob in Goodfellas, but it's also New York. So that's
Yeah.
certainly more personal. And this is an outside exploration for him. But I think that that's part of what makes it interesting to me also. But,
I mean, that's where it definitely adds some value in being different.
for sure. Brandon, you've been trying to say something.
Well, one, I do think that my first initial thought when you were talking about, liking Goodfellas more than the Casino, more than Casino, was that I was like, well, I mean, you can relate to it a whole lot harder because they do bring the Italian stuff to the forefront, and I don't like that was my first initial thought.
No,
And then-
you have a better chance of me seeing it young, if anything.
Subconsciously, you never know.
Sure,
Because the stuff is familiar, all I'm saying.
but it isn't.
Italian pride, I know you
Okay.
got it. But also, I've been listening to you guys, and it's so crazy. Like, I feel like everything that you individually are saying, I just immediately like try to apply it to the other movie, and like it works. Like
Yes.
like the
I
way
understand.
that Jesse described like being able to like personify with Henry Hill, because you see him starting from young and how he's not really in. That's how I felt about Ace as well, because he goes to Nevada just basically for like a fresh start, and he's not really in the mob. It's
Right.
it's Nicky, it's his friend. So really he's a lot of it is just like
New to
him on the outside, and I guess the difference is that they think he's a rat in this one and he is a rat in the other one. But I don't know, I didn't feel
He's the
differently.
equivalent of Batman to the cops, as the owner of the casino is to the mob. Like they don't like each other, but
Oh,
they
yeah.
they do like each other. They're gonna
Like-
work together.
like-
They
like
have to have an
we-
understanding.
We need to work together. you
Yes.
know? So I just feel like, the same way that I inevitably end up feeling about Henry is the same way that I end up feeling about Ace, where like at first I'm like, all right, dude, like you're cool, like you're kind of cute, like I'm with you, and then
The
there's
Niro
usually-
has never looked better in a Sassy.
there's just
never looked
like
better.
it's never like one thing, but it's always something that breaks the camel's back, where it's like you get a little inklings of things from both characters where you're like, oh wait, are you? I know
Are
you're
you the
bad.
worst?
I know you're bad, but like, are you showing it? And then you see where that they actually show it, and it all connects. Where like I feel like at even though they're not the same length, I feel like at the same point in both movies, I was like, oh, you're a piece of shit, and here we are. Like this is cool. And I don't know, like I still don't feel. I feel like this does come down to a matter of preference in
It
terms
really,
of like
really does.
of like what is presented, because I feel like I can garner both things from those, because like Sharon Stone's character isn't like the most fleshed out, but like you really only get I forgot her name.
well, her name is
Karen.
Ginger.
Oh yeah, Ginger.
Karen's Goodfellas, and then her pimp boyfriend is Lester.
Yeah, and I just feel like they try, like the same way they try to fill in Sharon Stone with the Lester stuff and like little tidbits there, is the same way that they try to fill the fucking Karen stuff, which is like, oh, here's just a moment between her and them, and then it's like, oh, here's a moment where her and all the brides
That's true.
together. It's like it can be. I think it does come to like how do you like this information being presented? And I will say that like Goodfellas is something that I would go back to sooner than Casino, simply because it's more of a fun watch. Sounds like kind of gruesome to say, especially given how I feel about these kinds of movies.
I mean,
but
we really went in depth on the quote unquote fun on the Goodfellas episode.
like
so go listen there.
Like, but that's something that like I would much sooner go watch. But if somebody sat down and was like, "Hey man, like I got like a bunch of time on my hands. Like if I had to pick one of these movies, which one should I watch?" And I'd be like, "Man, do you like politics or do you just like want to hang out with your friends?" Both are gonna tell you pretty much the same things, but like. I feel like it's definitely more business, like political side with the casino, and more like hangout, casual, mean street style with Goodfellas to me,
Mhm.
which is why I am so excited for Wolf of Wall Street.
Well,
I do think that is like a weird marriage of the two.
I think it literally is the breeding of both movies
And
and,
then,
giving DiCaprio his version of that
Yeah.
Sassy,
And
even
I'm
though he's got The Departed too.
But then I'm also like literally on the opposite side. It's one of those things where I feel like you both had one where you're like, I love this Sassy movie and I'm afraid to go back to it now that we're doing Sassy because it's like all the things are coming together and I might have to view it differently.
Mhm.
I mean, it's kind of all we all secretly feel about The Irishman, but we keep saying out loud, doesn't matter, we're going to love it. Because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter, we're going to love it, but maybe.
Dude, I
No,
have
'cause I
a
think-
slight trepidation.
I think about all the scenes in the movie. Anytime I
you're
think about
right.
any of them, I'm like, it's
See,
better than
and then
literally everything we've
and then
seen.
we always get here. So, like,
You're
I'm
right.
excited for Wolf of Wall Street, but then it's like, what if, like, that's the thing that I'm not excited for? Where it's like, this is actually just, like, you reusing all your old shit and not refining it in any way.
It's possible, but I think it's going to end up being your preferred of the three. That's my best guess. Where
The Irishman?
No. Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to have Goodfellas, you're going to have Casino, and he's going to have Wolf.
I think that's probably fair.
But we'll see. I'm not calling the shot, but
True,
I
true,
am.
true. Hey, look at us. All
I
different pro
wanna-
tags.
I want to say that Casino is the most recent rewatch that I've had of a Sassy that I had seen most recently.
Mhm.
Like I had seen Casino for the first time only like maybe a little over 6 months ago.
Yeah, I was going to say it was within the last year.
It was around Thanksgiving, and that was the last new Scorsese I saw post Irishman, pre Chronic Canon.
Nice.
So it was not fresh, but it was fresh enough
Pretty
where
fresh.
I was able to retain most of the feelings that I had the first time, because I remember the first time I saw Casino, it just felt clinical. It just felt like it was just a rundown of all this information. That's what it kind of does for a large extent of the movie. It is just a rundown of information and mechanics. And I think that plays into the thing that Frank and I discussed about this movie being more specifically in a meta way about filmmaking and how Scorsese controls all these elements of his films and his sets and his characters and his actors and yada, yada, yada.
And his personal life.
And his personal life, and integrates all of that within one microcosm, which is a casino.
Okay.
So
I was going to ask if when you are feeling your love for this movie, what is it that hits you first? Is it like the filmmaking or is it the story and the characters?
I do think that it is the filmmaking
I thought
that
so.
hits me the hardest first.
And that
But
makes sense when we think about, well, when I start thinking about like specifically yours and mine's like general like things we're attracted to. I was going
Right.
to say sensibilities, but not that I disregard the filmmaking and you disregard the story and character, but I
Not the
think the
case.
things we first get
Well, no, 'cause
drawn to
I
more
think-
often than not.
I think that it's, at least in this case, almost interesting that this movie operates like man in the this is my job and I have to be as good at my job as possible. And then there's all these things from the outside that end up encroaching on his job. And this is also, ironically, the movie to come out. We've reached a very important point in this timeline where De Niro also has a movie coming out 2 weeks in the timeline that Casino comes out, and that's Heat. So imagine going to the theater 2 weeks from each other to see both of these movies.
My
for the first
soul
time.
would leave my body.
And then think about De Niro in both of these movies too, and the characters that
There's
he's
so
playing. Like,
metal.
God,
I
I would just
actually
want to hold
think
his hand.
of all the characters in De Niro's filmography, Casino might come closer to Neil McCauley than anybody else, because I think he's literally doing the exact same thing. It's all about the job until the moment he sees Ginger, and they focus very harshly on that moment. They cut all the sound out, just like Scorsese does on every important noted moment in his movies. And the look on De Niro's face is like perfect acting, because it looks like the inquisitive, almost somebody at an auction about to buy something. It's really fucking.
It was good and
really,
chilling.
really, really fucked up.
Literally, okay, I was talking on the phone earlier with Frank, and I was waxing about Punch Drunk Love, a movie that I will probably mention later. But we're talking about like love versus lust presented like genuinely in movies and how the two can be misinterpreted, and like that, like you saying that, and then Frank saying that earlier just made me immediately be like, that is definitely lust, and the whole movie's interpretation.
I don't
of
even
it
know
is
if it's
love.
lust. It might be power, which is
Well-
involved in that. But you can lump the two
I mean,
together.
it
but
really
I
is
still
loneliness.
Well, yeah.
that too.
And
but
all those things like circulate each other.
like the scene where he breaks down everything. I remember you having like that. At least he's telling her what he wants, like or something like that.
He
Like, you
does
felt
lay
bad
it.
for him.
He does lay because he lays it all out. I feel like it's
But so does she.
I feel like more often than, which is why like I think that's why it's harder to watch the inevitable fall from their relationship, as well as also like it made it also a little easier. I was like, well, yeah, I didn't think this was going anywhere
Look,
but
man,
here.
if
Yeah.
we've learned anything from Sassy over time, when they lay out exactly how something's going to happen at the beginning of a movie, it's always how it happens.
It's gonna fucking
So,
happen.
You know,
You're
that's,
you're the operator of your own demise.
and I
Yeah.
almost think that this movie is the most on the nose on that front. But I think in a way, I think it's interesting how it seems like the movie knows this, but the characters aren't as aware of this. Even Ace, where like fucking he's not like. Every time Sharon Stone will give him a new reason as to why this will never work, the Ace's plan for marriage between the two of them,
Mhm.
he's got a new reason as to why he can find a way to make it work because he's got to, because that's it's a part of his being is to just make anything that he wants happen, right? Or at
Yeah.
least that's where it seems like he's being portrayed in the movie.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I feel like that's like, I mean, I don't know much about like gambling and bookies, but it seems like they're trying to really go on like that's like the bookie like
Yeah.
mentality of it. 'Cause,
He's
like,
also a perfectionist.
Yes.
The blueberry muffin
A
scene.
handicapper is what his
Oh,
official thing was.
yes.
Interesting. Well, he had a
Calling the
couple, right?
handicaps. Huh?
He had a couple different titles, right?
no, he's
I
talking
think
about like what
his
yeah,
specialty,
like,
what
what
got
he
him
was
in.
good
Yes,
at.
yes, yes.
He
yes,
was
yes.
he was the best handicapper.
And I believe before all that, when he lived, that's another thing in the movie. They always
Sports
talk.
bets.
They always talk about back home. They never say
Yeah.
where. They're
Which
always
is
just like back home.
I
I
like
do
that.
like- I do like
that a lot.
I do
in
like
in real life, back home is Chicago.
That makes
Chicago.
sense. That makes sense.
So I'm almost wondering if he's saying back home simply so he can equate it to it being just big urban city East
And
Coast.
I guarantee you, I mean, I haven't looked. Man, we should do more research. But how the fuck am I going to find this?
Well, what are you
Though,
trying to
I
know?
was gonna say like I feel like Scorsese had to have had a similar trajectory to like the only other equivalent I can think of is like a Wahlberg, where he's like all of a sudden the street kid's getting famous, and I'm sure he brought along his friends, and that is like something that weirdly Mark Wahlberg constantly is trying to like put into his work. But I think Scorsese is too. He always seems to have the back home. Not always, depending on the movie, but when it's these group dynamic movies, there always seems to be like the original group of people. I mean, that is the conflict of
Well,
the Irishman.
How many movies does Scorsese have in his canon that don't take place in New York?
Maybe like 5.
I
But
don't. I actually don't think the number would be high. I think it would be small.
but what you're saying right now, Frank, about like I think I literally understand why rappers fucking love Martin Scorsese.
Is Raging Bull in New York?
It
New York?
operates in New York at points. It goes there.
Yeah,
I think that's all I'd count it as. If we never go to New York at all, we're never there.
I think it's 5 to 7 total of all 24
Of 25,
that are
24?
not in New York.
Jesus.
And Killer of the Flower Moon will not be New York either.
No. But anyway, why do rappers like Scorsese?
Well, it's the thing where you were talking about, like, you wonder if his trajectory is the street kid who brought up his friends and, like, like, made it from nothing. And, like, I talked about it on the Goodfellas episode, like, the whole idea of rags to riches. But I don't know, the way you just framed that right now, right, I think it really made me understand. Because, like, since, like, watching a lot of these Scorsese movies and listening to rap music, I'm hearing references like all the time. I literally just played Jesse a song the other day called Joe Pesci 38.
Speaking of Joe Pesci and rapping, because we never fully got into it in
Hey.
other
So
podcasts.
Fucking
Podcasts.
wise guy.
So,
wise guy.
yeah, if you haven't heard it, Joe Pesci has an album. Actually, he has a couple albums. He has one album where he does a cover of Stevie Wonder's My Sharia Moore featuring Adam Levine.
Jesus
Joe Pesci.
Christ.
Bro, when you fucking make like 10 hit movies when you're like pretty young and it's like I have all this money and I can do what I want, nothing matters anymore. Because he doesn't like acting.
Well,
What's-
Joe Pesci was somebody who I believe was also tied to the mob a bit
Yeah.
in real life.
From what I understand, yeah, in his young
well, like the
days.
funny house story is a real thing that happened to him.
Joe Pesci's net worth is $50 million to this day.
And that's only 50 million lower than Sassy. Sassy's working his ass off, and fucking Pesci, all he has to do is say
Hey, man.
fuck you a couple of times and boom, $50 million net
That's
worth.
how you get the movies you want made.
We love it.
You
Yeah.
take less.
What about De Niro? What's his net worth?
Holy fuck. I mean, this is all according to Google. $500 million.
De
That makes
Niro?
sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I mean, he's a producer all the time.
That's true.
That makes sense to me. He's definitely got his foot planted
Yeah.
in Hollywood.
But you know what?
That's so much money.
Interesting time to bring this up too, just because I feel like that's a point that Scorsese makes. There's a really cool interview that he does about Casino where it almost seems as if the interviewer is kind of challenging him, but not in like an intelligent way.
The one that we listened to on the way here?
Yes.
Okay.
And the point where he says something about like the reason that people can identify with these characters is because I put somebody as a performer who is so identifiable in those roles. Robert De Niro, who the audiences love to attach themselves to and watch just act. Like, for instance, not a really interesting story, but it kind of relates. My mother loves John Mayer. She loves his music to a certain extent, but the thing she actually loves most about him is how well he plays the guitar. And like anytime she's ever seen him live, she always says that that's the biggest takeaway is like just watching him play. Like she's like, his show is nothing. He just stands there and plays and sings, but it's the most enthralling thing in the world just to watch him perform.
Mhm.
I feel like I have a similar feeling about watching Bob De Niro act. Like it's
I
just
get that.
fucking like, woo, you are so good at this. It's like you've never had an ounce of training in your life. It just comes right out of you.
Mhm.
It's so natural in every single one of these movies. Like Mean Streets is like the craziest first movie to do with a director, even at that young point in his career too. Even his early movies with De Palma, you can see stuff.
I was gonna
Ironically,
say-
you know, but we'll get into that later. Actually, De Niro stuff.
Okay.
But De Niro playing somebody like Rothstein, I think that because of the fact that De Niro can exude some of this charismatic energy at the very least, because we've always talked about the concept of De Niro being a poor romantic lead or being a poor like charmer, but he's charming in the way
I
that
disagree.
Well, elaborate.
No, New York. That was
York,
all
New
it
York.
was like, oh, he's not getting it, and you're like, what? He is getting it.
He is getting
and I
it.
think that is just a matter of opinion. in terms of,
That's what
like,
I'm saying. I think he's good
I
at
guess.
it. Heat, man. He asks you
Sometimes
questions.
more than others. It doesn't always hit for me, but sometimes I'm like, yeah.
I
I mean, I
think-
always think he's cute. It's just like, man, you're so aggressive.
Well, it's the same thing as Pesci. I've seen De Niro in enough of the roles to feel a little bit of fear anytime he comes on screen.
Nah. When I see Leo McCauley, I'm like, let's talk about that metal.
A teddy bear.
No, not
salesman.
exactly. But I don't see a cold-blooded killer.
Yeah.
I see
A man
Bob De
who lives in a
Niro trying to talk
cold,
about,
lonely apartment with nothing.
Is Heat a comedy? It might be a funny fucking movie making fun of all this shit.
Oh, wait up!
Like, I think it
Don't
might...
you see what men are like? At the end of the day, they just
Show me what
literally
you
want to
got.
hold hands.
Show me what you got. That's it. That's all they're trying to do.
Sit down, Al. Ah!
You can bomb my wife, but you do not watch my television
You can
set.
Sit in her ex-husband's
Dead
dead tech
tech
postmodernistic
Pacino.
bullshit
Pacino,
house.
we're recording get the fuck out. We are recording a podcast.
All right, I'm out of here.
Wah.
Dunkachino.
That's how he leaves the room. I'm out of here. Hoo-ha. Dunkachino.
What's my name? Dunkachino.
Can you imagine?
It's a brand new game.
Can you imagine Pacino playing Howie?
Oh, back in the day, like Serpico energy.
No.
Pacino.
90s Pacino. Like over the top hoo-ha, upper ass Pacino.
Dude, okay, just like I think
I need my motherfucking gem.
in Once Upon a
Listen.
Time in Hollywood, his entrance, like the Gina, 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 Gina.
I think that is one of the parts of the movie I like is Pacino.
Well, look, we can all fucking laugh at Pacino's like craziness all we want, but
He's
he is
brilliant.
brilliant. He is
He's
brilliant.
brilliant.
And he's
Man's
brilliant
a
in Heat,
genius.
and so is Robert De Niro,
And De Niro
as
is
well
too.
as Casino. Well, I know the opinion probably
I
differs a
just-
bit.
Pacino's a casino?
I think no,
No,
De
I'm saying
Niro.
De Niro.
I'll reserve my opinion about De Niro's performance till the end and how I think it compares to all the other ones. But I don't think he's bad. I feel like that was the implication that was starting to come. Like, I don't think he's bad at all, actually. I think he's very good at this role. I just don't like the way the role's written as much. But also,
is it similar issues to Age of Innocence, where you're like it's the script and that kind of thing more than
Definitely.
it is the elements of the
well,
filmmaking
I
and the
also
acting? And
don't love Sharon Stone's or Joe Pesci's performances here.
interesting.
I think Pesci's is. I think if anything makes the argument that this is too similar to Goodfellas, it's him. Like
That's
I
the
get,
thing that you can actually put the through line.
I
through.
get the like you said, the real life correlation, how to quickly get people in, but I would have much rather seen somebody else in this role. Like I just like it bothers me.
Well, I will
'cause-
say that because we haven't gotten to the historical fiction elements
Mhm.
of it yet, which is
Which
interesting.
we should.
That okay, then we'll get into it now.
Bitch.
Joe Pesci's character in this movie
Right.
is based on a character. I know his character's name is Nicky Santoro, right?
Mhm.
In this, so the real guy's name is Tony Spilatro, and Tony
God, that is just like that sounds like a fucking like
Sounds like you
all,
made that
like
up.
a, all that like mobster villain. Oh no, it's Tony Spilatro. He's got the eggs. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You guys do remember that bit from all that, right?
No, I thought you were talking about Tony Pajamas. I thought you were talking about Amanda Show.
That's what I
Oh,
meant. That's what I
that's
meant.
what it
Not
is.
all
You're
that.
right.
Tony
The-
Pajamas. Somebody tweeted a picture of him from the Amanda Show and said, "If you haven't seen this Scorsese classic, then you don't know mob
It's
movies."
Tony Pajamas.
It's Drake. Oh yeah. Okay.
Show me.
Yes.
Tony
Yes.
Pajamas.
I just remember. What's that for? For being an idiot.
Okay. I hadn't thought about that in so long.
Tony Spilatro.
Oh my
That
god.
was
Okay, so
oh my
definitely-
god. Oh my god. It's a Scorsese.
Martin.
It's
We need
Bobby
you to-
and Pesci.
Listen. Martin Scorsese. I know you don't listen to this podcast, but if you do,
Listen
you
up.
need to cast Drake Bell and Josh Peck in your final Irishman epilogue, featuring them as the characters, Tony Pajamas, and whoever his like toady is.
Whatever name you just said.
What?
His real name.
Spilatro.
Tony Spilatro.
That they're friends because they're both Tony.
But anyway, so
The tale
Tony-
of two Tonys.
the real Tony Spilatro is kind of a fucked up like sociopath, murderer, psychopath, and he killed
Is there
a
a
lot of people.
mobster who isn't?
I mean, probably not.
I mean, no.
Al Capone. Continue.
Okay.
Uh,
What?
okay,
Are you
yeah.
saying he's not?
He definitely was.
All right.
But anyway, Tony Spilatro looks almost identical.
Spilatro?
Spilatro almost looks identical to Joe Pesci in real life, whereas his counterpart in Goodfellas does not look like him at all. 6 foot and fucking like 250.
Yeah. His counterpart in Goodfellas is terrifying
This
because
is Tony Spilatro.
And he was a very tiny man, which is very important to Pesci's casting.
imagine
specifically.
Tiny Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, and then imagine if he was like a foot taller. That is terrifying. And just like beefier.
Yeah.
That is the real guy that's based off of.
Yeah.
Whereas like Tony Spilatro definitely looks like Joe Pesci here.
Well, they definitely carry more of a physical resemblance even in their body, if not their facial,
I think I see it in the
similarities.
face too.
Well, it's like, is that his? You could be showing me of a father and son right now, and I believe it.
But
Yeah.
one person who does not look anything like their real character is De Niro, who
Yeah.
the real life character's name is Frank Lefty Rosenthal.
Well, like the idea of what's the name came from him, right? It's not like
Well-
Jesus.
it's not like like it's not like this isn't verbatim. You okay?
I need everyone to Google him. Look at his fucking
Whoa!
That actually looks like De Niro energy
Holy
straight up. I never saw that.
That is a
pic.
peanut.
Is that? No, wait, hold on. That's not Ginger.
Met his wife,
So that is Ginger, probably.
That is not. Has no one ever? Oh Jesus! Has
He
no one-
actually looks like Daniel Stern.
You could project movies on that. Oh my God!
Daniel who's Daniel
I
Stern?
do
Oh,
remember-
that guy. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
Daniel Stern is Joe Pesci's counterpart in Home Alone as Marv.
Why? I would have.
The wet
With
bandits.
with wet bandits.
I would pay $1 million to see somebody deep fake. I will not pay you $1 million. But somebody
Deep fake fucking holy
deep
shit.
fake Daniel Stern on a De Niro for Casino. I want to watch that
Please.
movie.
Oh my god. Home Alone at the casino.
I think I find this way too funny.
It's
Okay.
hilarious.
You
So
do.
tell me about. So tell me. I'm sorry, I'm losing it. Tell us about Spilato and Frankie Lefty Rosenthal.
Well, I don't think there's as much to tell other than like I know that Frank Rosenthal or Lefty Rosenthal operated 4 casinos in Vegas, the most famous of which being the Stardust, which was one of the most notable casinos to be like torn down when they which at the end of the movie is like a real thing of how Vegas, or the old Vegas, literally fell. And then they rebuilt the Disneyland version atop it, if I'm going to take De Niro's quote at the end of the movie.
Which is what from I still understand. Basically the Wild West.
Yes.
I wonder, because to me, it's like, at the end of the day, it feels the same. Where it's like, okay, like Las Vegas used to be run by the mob and, they take shit and they steal shit. And it's like, now it's just major corporations. Like, what about Las Vegas has changed besides the building? Isn't the way that it operates with its citizens the same?
Well, I don't know about that.
Oh, wait, because, he, Ace definitely has a thing, like, during his ending speech where he's like, back in the day, like, if I was there, like, you had a chance of winning and something like that. Or was that from an interview that
because there's that whole scene where he fires fucking Joe Bob
Cowboy
Briggs.
hat?
Well, Joe Bob Briggs also is a horror introducer for this TV show called The Last Drive-In that's on Shudder, and he does double bills, and then in spurts in the movie they'll stop it and he'll talk about the movie with other people, and he's been famous for doing that for years.
Really?
So I find it interesting that he cast him in this movie because I don't think he's done much acting outside of this. But that scene where he fires him and all of that, when the guy comes in who's almost I think about Mulholland Drive now whenever I see those, because it's literally just this ominous cowboy walks in and is like, you better do what I tell you. And De Niro's like, no, I'm not gonna do what you tell me to
I'm
do.
not gonna look at you.
And he's like, he says something to him as he leaves, and I think he even does an ominous gesture as he's walking out the door, almost as if he's a force of nature, a force of evil, a force of death, or something, where he's coming to let him know, hey, you could just walk away from this, or you could just do the right thing, I'm asking you to do.
Just do me this favor.
We're gonna fucking
everything,
destroy
you have
everything.
will be
Well, we're gonna take down your empire, because Ace gets away in theory. He lives the rest of his life basically doing the same thing he was doing before the casinos. It's almost as if the casinos was just this random, crazy spurt in his life, and then it stopped, and then he just went back to what he was doing.
I was never the same after that summer.
Because I feel I was like, huh, one summer. It felt like it was longer, and I was like, wait, no.
Every, what's that? Wet Hot American Summer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Might as well be that.
Love it.
Right.
Casino and Wet Hot American Summer.
I think it's
Double
also
bill.
interesting that this movie comes out the same year as Showgirls, showcasing two sides of the casino life or Vegas lifestyle and how everything is toxic there too.
I think Showgirls has a lot more to say.
That's definitely a fair point.
And is a much better movie.
I've been curious to rewatch that recently too.
Maybe now's the time.
Yeah. Both movies that got strict with NC-17s, but I don't think that Showgirls ever dropped the NC-17. Scorsese did.
Do you know how? Do you know what they changed?
About the NC-17 rating for Casino? Well, I know that he included the Vice scene and made it as graphic as he did because he was hoping that the MPAA would focus on it and be like, we need you to cut that one. And so they'd kind of gloss over all the other shit. It would make something so violent that they think all the other shit, which is also so violent, not as violent. Or so it's all tricking the MPAA. But we love that.
The MPAA is stupid.
And they didn't end up objecting to the scene, but Scorsese still ended up chopping it up a bit. Because I know that there's a version of the Vice scene that exists where you see the dude's eye pop out of his head. I got your head in a fucking vice.
Deliveries, man.
That's the scene
what
that
does he
I
say?
walked in on you on.
Charlie M! You're gonna do it for that piece of shit!
Gonna make me pop your fucking eye out of your head for Charlie M?
Put him out of his misery. And that's that at that moment that I believe in the movie too, that's the scene that they say after that moment everybody knew don't fuck with him.
I tried quickly Googling the NC-17 thing and I just found a quick quote that I feel like I want to read. Because why not?
Hit it up.
Asked about the movie's violence, which is sporadic but extremely graphic, Mr. Scorsese shrugged and said quickly, the more greed, the more blood. The more gold, the more blood. The more you show the money, you have to show the blood. Maybe I didn't show enough. The violence in it has been measured in such a way that I hope it doesn't detract from the rest of the film.
Interesting.
I just like the way he said that. More greed, more blood. Yep.
I mean, but that's something that I think we touched on it a little bit, and I know it was something that was kind of a con for you, but I think that the whole idea of this being a movie that takes place in Vegas in a casino amidst the time of excess that it does and all the people exhibiting this excess, it only makes sense that for the movie to be as excessive as it is, including with its violence. But, I mean, the movie is also trying to just tell a story as best as it can through the history of the characters and dramatizing them to the truest of their abilities to the real story, it sounds like, because I've read things that say that ironically, being that Goodfellas is more, quote, historically accurate in the names of the characters and certain events, they do actually dramatize way more in Goodfellas than they do in Casino, despite the fact that the characters' names are different and certain elements about the movie are structured different. The way that things happen in Casino are almost beat for beat the way they happen in real life.
Okay. See, that's actually I had the opposite in my head where I thought that this one was more because this one says
it says adapted from a true story, because
whereas the other one says doesn't it say
it's based on it?
Based on.
Yes, this Goodfellas is exclusively based on. This one is adapted from a true story. So
it's
they're intentionally telling you which ones are supposed to be more fictitious or fabricated, whatever.
But that's confusing because what you're saying is that this one is more factual in terms of the events that happen.
Well, as far as the important ones that are quote historical. Do you understand what I'm saying? I think
how the mob worked in Las Vegas,
that and how the relationship of these people, and that relationship between Frank Rosenthal and Tony Spilotro and the ginger, I think her name's Jerry in real life.
Yeah. I see. So
that came to a head at the close of it was almost like a symbolic representation of the fall of that time in Vegas.
I see.
That's what Scorsese was saying. That's what interested him about it.
So with Goodfellas, it's based off a true story because of the real names of the people are being used, more or less.
And there's still real events. Yeah, no, there's definitely real events.
Just more
too.
dramatized.
Yeah, and they condense things in Goodfellas to make them work more conveniently for a movie.
Which I think makes sense and why I feel like Casino's more thin. Because I feel like the closer you follow things to reality, the less interesting they are dramatically. Which is just an opinion I have across the board. I think straight biopics are never as interesting as something that's a little more different. I'm not saying this is a straight biopic, but I think the dramatic flow isn't as coherent as it is in Goodfellas.
So what I'm hearing is you would much rather watch
a completely fictitious thing,
Rocket Man, over Jackie Robinson.
Sure. I don't want to watch either.
But Rocket Man's more fictitious.
Also, are you talking about 42?
Isn't there a movie called Jackie Robinson?
It's called 42, but I'm sure there's a movie called Jackie Robinson somewhere.
I was just tossing it out there because that was the first biopic I could think of. Because I think it was the
42 is definitely a biopic.
Yeah, 42 is all that's coming up. Isn't that who played him? It's Chadwick Boseman, isn't it?
Go up to your mic.
Yes,
it's Chadwick Boseman, isn't it? It is.
It is. Yes.
I mean, I still have no interest. I don't care for biopics.
Isn't that the same guy that made Get On Up too? Before Chadwick Boseman was popular for Black Panther, this was when he was coming up as an actor.
I heard about Marshall before I heard about Black Panther.
I forgot about Marshall.
Never saw it though.
I never saw it either. But anyway,
no, not the same filmmaker.
Okay,
but
same
both do have Chadwick Boseman.
Got it. Okay, wait. Oh, Get On Up's Tate Taylor, Ma, and The Help.
He did Get On Up?
I think so.
I've seen good things about Get On Up.
Look it up. Well, there's good things about The Help too.
I mean, I am more curious about Get On Up. Maybe it's just because I care about James Brown more.
Oh, is that the one with
Chadwick Boseman?
Am I right? Am I wrong?
Oh, there's another one.
Oh boy,
there is another one. That Don Cheadle's in.
No, you're thinking of Miles Davis.
No, Miles I know. Well, I know the movie. I for some reason you said that, and I saw the poster with the dude with the microphone.
Cadillac Records.
No. That's Beyonce and Adrian Brody.
Talk to me.
Look it up. If I see the poster, I'll tell you.
Talk to Me is Don Cheadle and I think Chiwetel.
That's it. That's the one.
Yeah,
this is about a radio DJ.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Ralph Petey Green.
Right on.
Okay. I love Petey.
It's on my list of movies.
But to get back to Casino.
Oh, it's The Lady Who Made Harriet. Everybody's favorite movie.
Oh, the one from last year?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. The one with the one Oscar nod? Thanks.
Yeah.
Cynthia Erivo.
The Hail Mary Oscar nod.
Yep.
Her performance was good.
Did you see it?
No. At the Oscars. When she sang. That was very good.
Right on.
But that's all I know about it.
I didn't watch the Oscars this year. I know we talked about that.
Yeah, they were early. Early on, we talked about that. Anyway, Casino.
We never talk about it like naturally and integrate it too well, or at least I don't, but I want to try more in the future. But to talk specifically about Robert Richardson as a cinematographer here and his first collaboration with Scorsese, because we will see more in the coming canon, it's amazing. Like, his cinematography is outstanding in this movie.
It is a very well-made movie.
Very clearly his take on, or his vision too, because any Robert Richardson movie will have that real harsh, blown out hair lights all over everything and super white lighting all over the place. I'm glad that he ends up working with him here, because I think his sensibilities or accessibilities are actually better suited for a movie like Casino than something like The Age of Innocence. And then as far as the editing too, Thelma's working on all cylinders as per usual here. Like, this movie is doing cut after cut after cut after cut. Like, this movie is constantly moving, constantly feeding you information, and that's got to be a lot to juggle in the editing room. And surely also the fact that we hadn't talked about it too specifically, but De Niro and Pesci's scenes where it was just the two of them kind of going back and forth and talking were pretty much almost exclusively improvised, where De Niro or Scorsese would just give them free reign to he'd give them a start point and an end point and say, figure it out. And they just film. And I know that it's something that other people have brought up too, but I notice it very specifically in that one scene in Ace's house where Ace is in the robe and he keeps hand gesturing and like not looking in Pesci's eyes while they're yelling at each other. But Pesci like stumbles over his lines a few times. And I know that Scorsese is like famous for doing that, where he will leave flubs into his movies because he feels like they're more natural. Like, it makes more sense for the person to actually flub over things they're saying than concisely list off this crazy rant, even though it's done plenty of times in the movies also. I love it exclusively in this scene here. And then I also love it in The Irishman for sure with the fucking father, because that's definitely a fuck up. There's no way that's not a fuck up.
That's something that I've always admired in movies, and I wonder if it is because of like I had a very like particular experience doing theater in high school where like there was a time where like I never done like acting or anything before, and like we were practicing a scene. And, like, I just remember, like, having to, like, itch my nose or, like, just do something, like, I don't know, like a person would do, just, like, fidget and just being like, like, I feel like I can't move. And at one point asking, you know, the director, like, is it okay to, like, scratch my nose or, like, you know, just, like, have, like, these fidgety gestures? And she was like, well, you're a person, aren't you? And I was like, right. I'm not just this thing. Like, I'm a human being. Like, I can act like a human being.
As long as you react in the moment as well. As long as it's not, as long as you do it as you would as a person.
Like as a person. So I think that, you know, that's something I do like in movies, where I can sort of see the humanity peeking through. Like the part, you know, when we watched Mean Streets and Johnny Boy blows up the
and runs away.
the
mailbox.
Way he's waiting for it to blow.
Waiting for it to blow up, and then when he's running away and he's looking back, and I know for a fact he didn't mean to run into that fucking wall, but like he ran into the wall and he makes it work. This is just like a shoulder clip, but it's like obviously, you know, that's a mistake. But like that already added just like some human to Johnny Boy. I was like, oh, look at this little scamp.
The one scene that I think of between De Niro and Pesci is on the phone toward the end when like the camera tilts with them and they're both leaning in.
So
like
good.
that's one of the scenes that pops in my mind when I think about this movie. I'm like, well, I like that.
Yeah. I also think as far as like Scorsese's direction, it's pretty insane. I think that if anything, this is like his talent show that he's exhibited thus far, where he's like, look at how good I can direct.
I feel like
he takes all of his tracking shots to another level and the mechanics of the things operating within those shots. Like, okay, we're going to look at this, and then we're going to go to this hand, and then we're going to go over here to the money, and then we're going to go over here to the coins being dropped through the machine, and then we're going to go over here to this person. And then like the scene that we haven't talked about specifically, but it might be like the most well-constructed thing in a Scorsese movie ever, is the scene where they were watching the two cheaters.
Oh,
like,
yeah. That scene's awesome.
God.
And that's
then
in
the
the
Jeff
first
Beck song that plays behind it too is so perfect.
That's in that first hour that I was digging pretty hard.
Yeah, that's still in the setup of the world.
I wish it just stayed with that. I wish it stayed broad or was only specific. I think that's what it comes down to. And because I feel like it's unfocused. And I feel that when you're praising Thelma's editing and his directing, I'm like, well, and this is a preference thing. Now, it's almost not worth saying. I'm like, well, I feel like they kind of failed in the sense of like, I don't think it has a great rhythm.
I think the unfocused energy that you're expressing is indicative of the characters more than it is the filmmaking, in that I think the characters lose sight of the things that they need to have their eyes on, and that's what ultimately makes the fall happen.
One thing that I really enjoy is that like
we know Sassy operates on those levels sometimes.
Every like 3 or 4 movies you'll say you'll say that this movie feels like a talent show for Scorsese. Because I remember you saying it during Goodfellas too, and I feel like I think during Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, you mentioned like, man, like he's leveled up since the last time we
Well,
saw him.
the one
He's
thing
always
that I
leveling
remember
up.
Yeah,
about
and I
Alice
just- I
Doesn't Live
really-
Here
I really like
anymore.
that.
Well, I feel like if anything, I like when he flexes that sometimes, and like I feel like each time he's done that, he gets better and better with it. Like
Mhm.
movies that I'd also expressed that idea with, like I don't know if I said it specifically in this podcast or not, but The Color of Money is another one that I think he's firing on a lot of crazy stylistic cylinders that he.
I mean, he
had-
always
and I mean,
is.
obviously, fucking After Hours too. I think that might be the movie I really said that on. But I think that here he reaches like almost an apex in terms of his style and evolving it into something that is almost just second nature to him, where there isn't a fucking flaw in the entire make of the structure of this cinematic piece. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you can definitely pick at and critique like how he manages to operate within the perfection that he's setting up, like, but I think it's only perfect in the technical on the technical end, like, whereas I think that narratively it does get like muddled and like a little fishy and like I don't know, it's hard for me to put into words sometimes.
I get what you're saying. I guess this feels like it's not. It's like it's a refinement, not growth, and I think I appreciate watching him grow more than watching him refine as a stylist. Does that
No, that's a valid point.
Mhm.
okay?
But I don't
And-
think that this
But
isn't him growing.
I don't know.
I do think that's a matter of opinion. I don't think that's a.
I mean,
objective
everything
thing.
is.
I
at
mean,
the end of the-
I know, but still.
What do we feel about? I just was looking. I was like, what are other things we should talk about? How do we feel about James Woods and Don Rickles and Kevin Pollak
Oh,
and their
well,
roles? I feel like we haven't really touched on any of them.
I love Don Rickles.
I
Yeah,
do
Don
think Don
Rickles is
Rickles
great.
might be my favorite part of the movie.
There's
just
a
'cause
real,
he's
real
hilarious.
cute interview with Don Rickles and Scorsese and De Niro
Fuck, I didn't
reminiscing.
watch that.
It's real cute.
I literally said that when
We
you
can when we
sent
stop recording. It's
Okay.
great. It's real cute. But Rickles is real fun in this movie, and I know that like Scorsese and De Niro, I'm pretty sure we're fans of his. So like,
I mean, of course.
and I remember hearing him say that it was like intimidating working on set with both of them to some degree, but simultaneously Don Rickles is also the biggest I don't give a fuck mentality person or at least that seems to exist based on every like performance I've seen of his, and both on stage and in movies and stuff. So I don't know, but that
He
just seems to
lived-
exude in his persona.
He lived until 2017.
Yeah, man,
That's wild.
crazy.
He looks so old.
Don
here.
Rickles, he voices Potato Head.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
okay,
It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
the
right.
first.
Toy Story?
As soon as Don Rickles walked on screen, just went,
yeah.
Mr. Potato Head, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh my god, it's Mr. Potato Head.
It's awesome.
I also think it's cool that Scorsese will use Don Rickles again in The Irishman.
Oh yeah.
Jim
yeah.
Norton plays him. He's the stand-up comedian
I forgot. about
at the birthday party for Sebastian Maniscalco.
Gotcha. That's cool.
that.
So Don Rickles played like
Don Rickles
mobster
wasn't in it.
parties?
Well, Don Rickles was like I guess he did. I know that that's a real event that happened because all the stuff that Jim Norton was saying as Rickles was all apparently lifted from his actual set that he told that night.
Nice.
He looks like him.
Nice.
I just gave it a Google.
Jim Norton and Don Rickles?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude.
There he is. Anyway, I feel like he doesn't actually like almost do anything in the whole movie. He's just
Yeah.
like there hanging out, but I love that.
I don't
just
know
like I'm glad he's there. Like
How do you feel about James
He's our
Woods?
Luis Guzman.
he is our Luis Guzman. James,
Well, I hate James Woods as
right,
a man.
of course. I hate him as a man. He's a pretty good
Dude,
actor.
I've literally never heard anything like good about James Woods. My whole idea of James Woods comes from Family Guy.
Yeah, that's a pretty big
Watching
one.
Videodrome and knowing James Woods now is a trip.
The Flash. That's my James Woods.
the new flesh.
I mean, like his character. I mean, like he's obviously good at playing it. He's obviously very slimy and successful at making me be like, ugh, every time I just look at him.
I love that scene where Ginger's talking to him on the phone after the wedding, and they cut to that. He reminds me so much of Sport in
Yeah,
Taxi
totally.
Driver.
Oh,
Like,
for sure.
Like the character feels very reminiscent, and I almost was like, man, I wish it was
But I will say,
Keitel.
I think the things that I liked the least in this movie is everything involving Lester and Ginger. Just because, like, I don't feel like I feel like if you're gonna put something like that in your movie, then you need to like focus on it a lot more. But that's not the story.
Well,
Like,
it's not what
not
Ace
about
cares
him.
about either.
But I agree. Well, he does though.
Well, he cares about her leaving him and being separated from
part of it.
him. And that scene where they come to blows is obviously very important.
I think that's a very well done scene.
Yeah.
But I think, I don't know. I feel like he's thrown in. He
Did
feels
you know
thrown in.
that he
feels like
filmed
it.
his part in 2 days?
That makes sense.
So that literally tracks with what you're saying.
Yeah. I just like but I think he's good at it.
Apparently,
Yeah,
Sharon
his
Stone told the
performance.
little girl actress to annoy the shit out of him, like on purpose.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I think he actually might be one of the stronger performances
Like,
in
his
the
performance
movie.
is great. I will give him that.
But I just like I don't. It's not even like not liking his character. It's like not liking his function in the film as much. I agree with what Brandon said.
Well, I think
But-
it's
but-
interesting how, Ginger is a character who we only get small glimpses of her like on her own and seeing her humanity for what it is. And I think that the scene where she's on the phone with Lester is one of those scenes because of the fact that they talk about the history of that she's known Lester since she was 14. She's essentially an Iris who
Right.
just never got
Right.
away like from the
never had her hero.
fucking Travis came to her too late in this movie.
Ew.
But
disgusting.
anyway, so that scene is really like interesting to me. And then whenever it cuts back to Lester, James Woods talking on the phone on the other end, he's just got other girls around and he's talking to her about how she's the special one and she's the one he wants, just like Keitel does with Jodie Foster in the dancing scene in Taxi Driver. And it's odd that we talk about how both those movies come from the perspective of the protagonist as well, both being De Niro, Ace, and Travis. And I don't know necessarily if that's Ace's perception of how he imagines that phone call went, like between the two of them, or if that is like supposed to objectively be how,
when you
how
talk
it is.
when you talk about humanity, I will say that's like the only instance between the two of them where I'm like, like this is more understanding. I do get like
and the scene
idea
where she comes back after they
Yeah,
have that fight
like-
towards the end where
like
he's
the-
in bed.
like the toxic relationship thing. Like and I get like the push and the pull of that for sure. But that phone call, I think, was the only time where I was like, I do really understand like why you are going through the things that you are.
She doesn't know anything else at the time, at least from what it seems like, too, right?
But
From how it's
I just feel like
presented.
the way that they build her character, I think too much relies on the crux of just like it's always Lester. When I know
Yeah.
that there's a lot more to that, and I know that they do try to present that in some ways, it doesn't feel very fleshed out to me.
Sharon Stone
Yeah.
has said that as far as her character is concerned, that Lester is the love of Ginger's life and he owns her heart.
I buy that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's how it's presented.
100%.
But I don't know. I
Because
feel-
whenever she leaves, it doesn't ever.
I mean, it
It's
doesn't
never
matter
that
if
she
it's-
wants to leave him.
It
It's
doesn't matter if
literally
it's
never
Lester or
that.
if it's Ace. They're all toxic in one way or another. So,
Yes.
and then obviously being on drugs and all those other things.
the dudes rock,
help.
man.
The dudes do not.
If there's one thing I learned from Sassy's filmography, it's that men are the best.
Yeah, that's
Right.
what I'm taking away.
You guys have taken the right things away, it sounds
I
like.
do feel like Casino doesn't add anything new thematically to his. What? How do you say it? Au revoir? Au revoir?
Over.
Over.
Okay.
revoir.
No,
Au revoir.
no, knock it off.
Over.
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 Fuck.
Whatever.
Spell it.
I can't.
Ouevre.
Bleh.
Oeuvre.
Okay.
Over.
Work
Ouvre.
of art.
It might be ouvre.
It might be.
Ouvre.
Evra. I don't think.
Evra.
All right, his Evra.
So I don't think Casino adds a lot to his.
Got it.
I don't even remember the point I was gonna make. Fuck it. That was it.
Well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily feel like. Again, I don't know if this was as much of a passioned project for him as far as like he sought out the material. I know it's again more material that was brought to him. Obviously, it
I
was
think
probably
that's just how he works.
T-Bix.
I don't think he seeks anything out since.
I guess Last Temptation of Christ was brought to him and like all these other things, but he ends up pursuing certain projects for a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah, yeah.
Casino, like we said, it's crazy that he made it as fast as he did off the heels of Goodfellas. Like I do
Yeah,
think
5
it
years
is-
later.
it's odd that he comes back to not just this particular material, but even Nicholas Pileggi as
Yeah.
a writer.
Which I think probably is why there are so many like undeniable similarities.
And the fact that also this one is a bit more journalistic than Goodfellas is.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely has that energy to it.
Right.
More of like a story to be told.
This movie kind of just feels like a lot of like glimpses and like it doesn't necessarily feel like that might be what it is that I like about it is that I can't necessarily just lump it in with like a Goodfellas or something else because narratively it's just not that, and it is kind of its own beast in the way that it examines these characters in this particular world. Obviously it ties in thematically with Scorsese's other stuff, as particularly his mob movies, but I think even separate from those, it's working in different frameworks, if anything, using the framework of the mob movie to then create this canvas that he's now operating on with Casino. But I also think, like we said, the location switch is unique. I think the historical elements are unique. I think this may even be the closest that he's come to making a Western, or at least maybe even evolving the genre from something that, like we've talked about, the Vegas, he even says it in the movie that Vegas was one of the most ruthless, like, settlements in the Wild West because there was no law there. It was in the middle of the desert. That one particular shot, which has to be CG, but it's like brilliant shit, where you see all the lights surrounded by darkness of Vegas.
Do you think it's
desert.
CG?
I mean, maybe. Seems like I would imagine it would take a lot.
Are you talking about the one when they're flying overhead and it
Yeah.
zooms in?
Yes.
Dude, I don't know, man. That might be real.
It might be model, but it's definitely not like a real shot of the city.
How are you so sure?
I mean, I don't know. It just, the clouds and stuff that are so close to the camera and stuff, it feels very stylized. But I guess maybe it was tampered with, but it could be.
Because, I mean, like, I've flown
Apple
over
TV
Vegas
shots.
at night. And
Apple TV shots, man.
It fucking looks like that.
It's just, I don't know if a camera can expose that.
You
know what I mean?
From so far away.
From such a height, too. Yeah. But I mean, hey, Vegas is fucking bright, man.
It stands out.
Yeah.
It
Can't you
like
see
that.
it from space?
Yes, you can.
I mean, like, you can see anything from space. If
No,
you're
no,
looking.
no,
The
like,
closer you move, if in space.
No, at night, like I'm pretty sure it's like lit up more so than like the rest of the
There's
room.
one place specifically. It looks like the Luxor Sky Beam.
Okay, that makes. Is that the pyramid?
It's the brightest light on Earth. It can be seen from outer space.
Wow, fucking Vegas. Talk about
Why the
excess.
fuck do you need that in Vegas?
Exactly.
Exactly. Just to say you do. It is excessive. It is the Wild West. Nothing matters. No rules. Who gives a fuck?
Yep. I mean, I remember when I was there as a kid thinking this is crazy because the literal streets are just lined barely with concrete, but with just trading cards of naked girls.
Oh yeah.
It's like all it is. At least it might be different now. That was what it was like in like 2006.
Doesn't sound like Vegas should exist.
Probably not.
Nothing should exist. What do you mean?
There we go.
Kaboom!
Hey, what's that thing that you smoke? It's not like a bowl or a bong. I don't think it's a joint either.
I think it's a blunt, and I think it's time that we get blunt.
Oh,
Do you guys think so?
let's be blunts, perhaps.
Are you sure?
I think that we've really
think
been driving force the same points for like this whole time.
Well, I
so-
think
feel-
as far as
I
the
feel
movie's merit and
I'm gonna
stuff is
fucking punch you.
concerned, it's like it's easy to cover
No.
that real quick. I think a lot of the value in the movie does kind of come from rewatching it and like figuring out the things that you like or not like, but like to observe about these characters. This is only the second time that I've seen the movie, but I think having seen it the second time, the inevitability of it rang a lot truer and a lot harder. And I think that, you know, certain like scenes of the movie are the things that I feel like I've neglected to talk about, where I think that there are so many great moments and scenes in this movie that you could just like, oh, remember that part, this part, that part, this part, that part, which I think could also go toward the argument of this isn't as great a movie. But I think if anything, it does tie into a whole, and it's more or less just a mosaic of a time and a place and certain people that operated within that. And it's even more focused in on those specific people, whereas I think like movies like Goodfellas and The Irishman have more extremities, even though I think with Irishman, you can also lump it into the three. And you could with Goodfellas too, but then you have to consider Karen, and you have to consider Paulie and other characters. But I think those two more specifically.
I mean, can we talk about at least the two scenes of violence a little more?
Yeah, please.
Because they were
Sure.
affecting, and we just kind of like tiptoed around it in the beginning.
Yes.
Just the head in the vice obviously is crazy, and Pesci going all out.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious. All that for fucking whatever.
Charlie
M. Charlie M.
Yeah, it's so funny.
You do that for that piece of
I
shit?
gotta pop your fucking eye out of your head for Charlie M.
Like I'm laughing. Am I supposed to be laughing? Is that fucked up? Am I fucked up?
I think that's Sessy's,
No, dude, and there's
Tarantino's take on Sassy.
like some
Coming
music
out.
in the background. I don't know. It definitely isn't played as like scary. It's definitely supposed to be like, this is just one of the things the mob does.
Well, I didn't mention that. Well, that song is like the it's like a rock song. It's
Yeah.
like trying to be like exciting and like, whatever. But I do think the gruesome element of the sequence itself makes it hard to watch.
Yeah,
But-
definitely. It was. I mean, like
Well,
I wasn't
and the
enjoying
intense- the
watching.
With
intensity
every
of
crank, I
Pesci's
got
performance.
scary. I
Yeah.
got scared. I was like, oh shit! Like, why don't you just say it already? Jesus.
I
And-
didn't mention that this movie is Needle Drop City 2, bigger and louder. Like, it is Goodfellas on crack in that regard, too. There's not a moment where there isn't a song playing.
Except for when he sees Ginger.
No, there's that part, and then immediately it goes into the ooh, baby. That song.
I also the scene at the end killing Pesci and his brother, which is
way more brutal to me.
it is extremely brutal and hard to watch. But I think those are like when I think about it, like the scenes that have stuck with me are the cheating scene at the casino,
Yep.
the 2 scenes of extreme violence, the phone call, and the shouting on the lawn. And I do think actually their fight on the lawn seems straight out of Wolf of Wall Street,
Yeah.
but is also like the highlight scene of their whole dynamic.
Have
like
you-
that scene I think is well
did you
done.
did
With
you
the police
notice?
there?
Well, I was gonna say, did you notice in that scene how nice they were to Ace, and
Yes.
how he definitely had a relationship with the 2 specific cops that
Yeah.
were there?
He was asking about his kid or whatever.
Yeah.
And how he's
Because
pregnant.
they all are connected. It's
Yeah.
shit that's fucking subtly thrown into it. And it takes me being reminded like that, like, oh, fuck, that's right. It's all there. It's in there. It's just fucking like, it's not as direct and in your face sometimes when it comes to the political and more broad social scopes that the movie's dealing with. It's
Yeah.
all in micro interactions with these
Mm.
characters. I
Been a
think.
while since I brought it up, but I will say that seeing the cops there in that scene definitely reminded me of the court retelling of one of the first times the police visited the home of OJ and I'm forgetting her name. That is really bad. Nicole, where the police arrived and were just like, oh shit, it's OJ Simpson. Like, hey
Oh,
man, how's
yeah.
it going? And like they wrote down her claims and like they listened to her and they're like, yeah, we can help you, whatever. But like it really was them chatting it up with OJ Simpson, and at the end of the day, they left. It's like, yeah, this is definitely reflecting on things of like, this is the reality of it. It's not just one thing or one person. It's all a connected system.
Well, then
Ace's
and after that,
coveted
she
control of
she goes to the
everything.
bank immediately to go get all the money and all the or jewels or whatever it is, and then Ace shows up hot on her trail. And even though she's been telling him the whole time, "I'm gonna give you up, I'm gonna give you up, I'm gonna give you up," the moment the cops try to fucking shake her down, she doesn't talk, which is crazy.
Because also at the end of the day, what we realize inevitably by the end of the movie is that he isn't doing anything illegal. Like at the end of the day, he's just an asshole.
Yeah.
He's definitely
Like, in
involved in
terms of-
illegal dealings, though.
Well, yeah.
But like,
Outside of the situation they're there.
I just feel like
for,
his
though.
hands aren't in it. Like I feel like the only thing she could rat on him on is the job changing stuff.
Mm.
But in terms of like what his hands are touching,
Mhm.
it's nothing related to the mob or anything. Like the police even come and question him about Nikki, and he just
Well, that's
gets
be-
sad
he
and
keeps
closes the
trying
door.
to separate himself from Nikki all the time. Is where he's like, Nikki, you got to shut the fuck up. Like, especially where he's like, you don't understand. Like, you're in the black book, dude. Like, you can't get out of that book. You can't come back to Vegas. If I fucking get caught seeing you or talking to you anywhere, I'm fucked too. I'm not doing that. You can't ever come back here. And then he opens up his restaurant and stays. Where he's like, that's what again, more
Hubris.
hubris the movie, where it's just like, nope, I'm not going nowhere. Same thing with De Niro and rehiring Joe Bob, or should I say,
Joe Bob,
Benny from the Bronx.
Benny from the
Hey,
Bronx, literally.
The equivalent of Benny from the Bronx.
I'm glad we didn't get blunt right away. Jesse, there's something you didn't talk about that I think you specifically said you wanted to talk about.
Oh, was that?
The opening credits.
Oh,
That
yeah.
I'm
like-
Frank,
I'm Jesse.
Brandon.
I think are stupid.
I just think they're fun. Oh, well, it's interesting. I did want to talk about that.
I don't remember opening.
That I think
I
they're
don't remember
stupid?
opening credits.
That I'm stupid. No, I'm kidding. The opening credits, because I remember at the end, and I had the thought the first time I watched the movie and this time that I watched the movie, and it wasn't until this time that I watched the movie that I got the read on it, because I remember when you were like, at the end, they showed De Niro get blown up at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, with the body.
And I was like, yeah, they do. Because
But
I
then
remember
that's
thinking
why
that
it
was weird.
shows him flying or whatever.
Well, it's his. I think that's almost similar to the way that There Will Be Blood introduces Plainview with that scene to just immediately inaugurate you into respecting this character in some way, right? Daniel Plainview, not this. But with this, it's similar to how Ace Rothstein is framing the movie from his lens And if he shows you him, if you see him
This is
die,
how I got fucked.
yeah, then the whole movie you think this guy's gonna die and not get away with it, and then all of a sudden it's almost like, so wait, you did? But it's almost like a precursor to the Irishman because he's not quite old. He's old enough, but he's just living his life, and that's that.
That's how I think almost all of his movies end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, does every Scorsese movie end that way?
Definitely,
Just like the protagonist,
Jesus
like,
dies.
okay, well, here I go. Who dies?
Jesus. You said every. Jesus does die at the end of the movie.
nah, he lives.
Yeah,
forever.
but that is
He
him
lives
living.
forever.
That is him living. That's him. He's choosing death.
There you go. You got it.
Choose life.
Good save. It
So
wasn't a
fuck.
good save.
So fuck up.
But the
no, but
opening credits,
that's literally like that's how Wolf of Wall Street ends. Where he's like, "Yep, did all this crime, and
Yep.
now I'm a motivational speaker."
I meant to bring this up before.
I knew there was more. I was
But
like, you guys, there's more.
Another thing that a reason why I was like, interesting that you didn't click with this movie and that Scorsese uses this cue. Do you remember like that part of the movie where it sounds like a score for the movie where it's like, there's like an orchestral like theme that kind of plays throughout the movie.
What's the scene?
It happens a
throughout
few
the
times. A
movie?
few times it'll come in, but I know that
Do you
there
need
was.
me to play it?
I'm pretty sure there's one that happens when Pesci and him are driving or something. It's more emotional stuff. Oh, it's one of the shots of the desert, like where it's going over the desert. You hear
and the
that scene.
time
Yeah,
lapse?
I don't know about that, but it's like he's flying over the desert with a crazy helicopter shot. It's just like vast nothingness.
Okay.
But that music cue is from Contempt.
Oh,
Like he's retooling Godard
interesting.
into this. And I was like, weird that he picks that track. And I thought I recognized it when I was watching it, but I was like, oh, maybe it's just because it's Casino's score, but it's the Contempt theme.
Jean-Luc Godard.
And I think
Yeah.
it's interesting how that plays into the things that we've talked about, where this movie is a movie about movies or the making of movies,
And a
Contempt,
tumultuous
and a tumultuous
relationship.
relationship getting in the way of that.
And another movie I
Contempt.
don't care for.
Yep, exactly.
I think it's like the only Godard I've seen that I didn't like so
Yeah.
far.
And I do like Contempt a lot, so it makes quite a bit of sense.
Okay. All right, now I got nothing.
That is actually the last thing I definitely had off the top.
So
So what's the thing that we smoke? it's not a bong.
you gotta stop
cigarette?
smoking, man. You get
Or-
confused.
or a bowl or a joint. What's that other thing?
It's a blunt, baby.
A
Oh
backwood.
shit!
And it's time
Let's
to
get
get it.
back. Wait, let's get blunt in here.
Yeah.
Now, as much as I do love Casino, it has reached my number 2 on my rank.
Not
of
number
current
one?
Scorsese. No, because I thought about it and I was definitely like, I think I do take more from Taxi Driver as its own
Mm.
entity. Whereas I think once we get to The Irishman, I'm just going to be thinking about The Irishman all the time.
Yeah.
But I do think that Casino's a movie that I'm going to come back to a lot. Like, I don't think I'm not going to be interested, or I'm not going to be not interested in returning. However, I'm curious to see where my thoughts evolve on movies like After Hours, Age of Innocence, and Color of Money, and even Goodfellas. But Goodfellas is a movie that has not stayed with me nearly as intensely as I hoped it would. But
Casino
know
left
why.
me before I even left your house. I was like, all right, I'm done thinking about this. Obviously, I ended up thinking about it more because I was confused why it doesn't work for me so well. And
I think you got a pretty good handle on it. And I'd say all those points are fair.
iffy handle on it because like I theoretically could argue why all those points are wrong.
And I could do the same for New York, New York.
Why are you come on? Yeah, that's true.
But I did want to point out that regardless of my love for this movie and even Brandon's small admiration that he has,
Yeah, wait, we got to figure out where Brandon landed.
where'd you land, Brandon?
Well, I guess finish your thought. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that I know that we even stated the rule that if there is somebody within the Canon group that is not a fan of the film, it is automatically not a Canon
Well,
film.
we all get to vote still.
All right.
Because, I mean, like, in retrospect, I feel like we should have voted Temptation into Canon. too.
Interesting.
I think that is a more essential Scorsese than, like, most.
No,
I wanted
but
to
it's
see
our-
Silence
we
first.
talk about this all the time. It's fucking our canon.
I know, which is why we didn't, and I am okay with it. But, like, I
Yeah.
think back on it, like, you know, from some outside view. But, so, Jess, you would vote for it to be in.
No, I'd vote against. Because
Casino?
yeah. Like my own canon, of course it's in. But I think that if we're talking about our chronic canon, Goodfellas fills the void, but that's where my mind is at. But I wanted to hear Brandon say it first.
So, I forgot. Hold on.
How do you feel? Where did you land with your opinions on?
Yeah, the problem that just happened was that I forgot the title of the movie. I
Casino.
went
Casino.
Casino. Yes.
Cassie.
I'm sorry, I'm winding down.
Casino.
Here's the thing. In terms of sticking with me, like Casino didn't really nearly as much as Goodfellas, but the only reason that Goodfellas did was because of the racial implications that I picked up from it and that I talked about on the Goodfellas podcast. So I don't really have to get into it too much here. But that is essentially like I was able to garner those things sort of in real time with Casino, having already had that like thought in my mind, because like the first thing when I think about is casinos is like Native Americans and stuff, and I was wondering if that was going to be a thing. But then I also remembered like I think
Interesting
Las
that they
Vegas,
don't really totally address that.
because I think
Is
that
that a
Las
factor
I
Vegas,
in
think
Vegas?
there are Native American iconography things placed
but I do
about.
think that Las Vegas is one of the more like removed places in terms of like casinos not being completely in relation to like the Native American story per se.
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, with it's hard for me to judge it accurately because, like, Goodfellas didn't stay with me because it was Goodfellas. So, like, I don't want to say that Goodfellas is better or I like Goodfellas more because it stayed with me, because, like, I feel like if I hadn't thought of the racial implications with that one, it would have came with this one, and Casino could have still, like done the same things for me. So I think where I ended up landing is literally like the middle. I couldn't flop on either side because I was like, I literally think that they
Well, at some
are
point you're gonna
essential-
have to rank them.
they're the same. Like
At
and
some
I already
point,
told you that
you
I would
have to
put
rank them.
Goodfellas above Casino
I-
simply because of the personal
Okay.
emotions that it gave me.
I'm
But
very
in terms
surprised
of the
after the conversation that we had to hear that they're just the same. It's just hard to hear that.
it's to me it feels like
I get it, though.
they're conveying the same things through different lenses, where like I get a more of a camaraderie, like friendship feeling from Goodfellas, where it's like, oh, this is just a family, but it's not blood that ties family.
Mhm.
Whereas like with Casino, I'm like, well, this is a business that operates within a family, and this is how the business overtakes the family, and that's how we get to the corporation.
It feels like
Interesting way to put
Scorsese's
it.
version of something like a King Lear or a Macbeth, where it's like somebody, rising to the top of, and it's like a classic tragedy and a grand scale and all of that, but
Jesus
it's just
Christ.
updated to a modern thing,
Yeah.
But I don't think that this is like Christ in that, like, I don't think
No, I
people
just mean
are-
like the rise and fall is
Oh,
just like that's
also,
Jesus.
one thing I did forget to mention, actually, the way that this incorporates the media into it is all interesting too, because we don't bring up the Ace Rothstein show.
Yeah, I thought about bringing it up, but then I was like, I'm just gonna shit on it. Like, I
Like,
think I'm like,
That's a real thing that
I
happened.
believe it. I believe it wholeheartedly. I just am like dramatically. I'm just like, okay.
I mean, it didn't make sense from real life, where I was like, why the fuck would you go on TV after they told you to stay out of the light?
Hubris.
Yeah. So it's like, and that was another thing I remember. I don't know which movie
When he's
it
telling
was.
Pesci to not do all that, and he fucking.
I don't remember which movie it was, but there was one movie where we're like, hubris, and then we all just went, fucking, I'm so tired of hubris. Fucking, why can't people just know already?
I've said hubris so many times that it's starting to look weird in
We
my
need-
head. Like the letters don't make sense together. Like,
We got to start saying
It's
it in
a
our
thing.
own lives,
Yeah.
though, man. All of us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for real.
Just like, oh no.
Our hubris.
This is my fall. It's just way less dramatic. So
Are you?
I will say that like I wouldn't, because Goodfellas is in the canon, I wouldn't be against putting this in the canon. I just know that it has to be unanimous. But I have no problem
no.
having Casino in the canon, just because like I feel like if I personally am gonna vote against it, then I should have voted against Goodfellas, because like
Interesting.
to me it's definitely like the after effects that were like more, and that's personal.
I felt that too, but only in the idea that, like, if we were choosing based on preference, then I would say I'd prefer Casino.
I would have never voted for Casino to be in any scenario. If y'all
Mhm.
both voted Goodfellas out, I still wouldn't have been
I-
okay with
yeah.
Casino.
I'm not saying you would have.
I'm sorry that
It's
I'm the
okay.
stick in the mud in this very specific scenario.
It's okay, but
But
it's
hey, somebody's got to be. Yeah,
it's not in the canon.
I just want
yeah,
you to
I'm a
know
vote.
that I will never ever apologize for not putting a movie into the canon like you both have profusely on your negative
Hey,
episodes.
well, that's because we're weird, I think that this
You
is
guys just want to like the same movie.
This is
Well, I think
of
everyone
course.
wants everyone to like the movies they
Of
like. 'cause
course.
That's
then
literally my whole thing. I argue with you guys about it all the time. It's
I
like, why
know.
can't you like what I like?
I know. So you should get it.
Why do you think I'm loving this so much?
All right. So I just being blunt, I think Casino is at the bottom of Scorsese, not counting the first two. Like those two do not count. Like when we're talking about it, it's like, yes, those are obviously the worst two. Like
We've
what?
been-
There's
we've-
nothing else even compares. Like
we've been working on our own like little like as we watch the movies, we've been adding like our own private ranked list. And when we all shared it the other day, like Boxcar Bertha was dead last on all of our
yes.
lists.
And Who's That Knocking at My Door and Last Temptation. Those we had the same bottom three, but
Except
now
you can swap out Casino and New York for Frank and I, because New York is in the exact same spot as Casino is in his list.
and you have Age of
I
Innocence.
was about to say,
there.
is Age of Innocence there?
So we all have a unique one now as our third least favorite.
That we
and,
hate to varying degrees.
and Casino, I think nobody said their grade. We usually do. I think I'm still tossed between a 2.5 and a 3.
Yeah,
Fiver.
I'm gonna give it 4. Same as Goodfellas.
All right. That sounds very reflective of everything we've talked about today.
Here we are.
And I'm sorry, but
That's that.
Casino's not in. That's that. And what's the final line of Casino? I remember
That's
it being
that.
good. Is that?
and that's that.
Yeah, that's good. That's
and
good
then
stuff.
De Niro stares blankly into
Yep.
the camera and it's over.
That's that. I like that. I do.
Now get out of my store, you fucking pervert! What did I say? That's that.
So,
It's that match, man.
oh fuck, it's not time.
Not yet.
We could do it now.
What?
No.
No, we
I
should say our
definitely-
goodbye.
I definitely
Oh,
want
Just
'cause
quick
this
wrap
is-
up. We've talked a lot about it.
This is the last time that we're gonna be experiencing Robert De Niro until we get to the fated Irishman. We do watch Heat every day, so like we won't be missing out on.
We'll
De
be
Niro
seeing him every day
particularly.
still.
We are true hedonists.
He
Yeah.
is coming over for dinner later, so like we will get our De Niro time, but no more Sassy and De Niro.
No.
Well, for
And you know what?
about 9 movies.
We're
Yeah.
also not getting any more Catherine Scorsese.
Yeah.
Casino was the last film she ever starred in.
And her
of Martin
most,
Scorsese's.
like,
Her most character she's ever been given in one
Yes.
of his films.
well, this and Goodfellas.
yes.
Funny enough,
But
are the
I'm-
two where she has done the most things.
Yeah, and I think that it's funny that she's almost kind of the downfall of the whole movie because the guy ends
Oh,
up
yeah.
he's just bitching about all the shit to
To
her
his
and the
mom.
place is bugged.
It's so good.
And
It's
she's so good.
She's just
Yep.
she's just perfect. Like Scorsese really looked up. He's like, I just have the best mom. I can put her in front of a camera. I don't have to give her a
I
script.
didn't know
I
that she
can't-
ended up in other people's movies too, but apparently she's also in like The Godfather 3 and shit.
Excuse the fuck.
She's
me?
just the
Yep.
Italian mom, dude. That's what she deserves.
Replace the Christopher Columbus statues with Catherine Scorsese.
Tear it down.
She's in Moonstruck
Apparently.
in China Girl.
I
Apparently.
have no idea she was in
Interesting.
Moonlight. That's crazy.
Get out
I
of
thought
here.
she was dead.
Yeah,
was.
she's the one who makes out with Chiron on the beach.
Everybody?
You disgust me.
Oh man, she's dead.
she's not here no
So
more.
sad. I feel like that scene literally I was like, well, it's just her and Marty. Marty, why do you swear so much? Ma. It's for
Well, it's
the
the same thing as
movies.
getting Mom, please
Please
stop
stop
calling
calling
me.
me.
I feel like we've said that on the podcast 1,000 times. Also,
It's a good one.
I think that might be the line that I've taken away from Scorsese's filmography thus far.
Yeah,
Rupert Pupkin's a
His
funny guy.
delivery
She's
of that
prejudiced
line is
tats.
amazing. He's prejudiced. Good that.
That might be comment. though.
prejudice good tats.
That's another one.
She won't go alone with me, you know. She prejudice against talent.
It's just like that's the first I've heard of that. Nice.
Well,
The other
Besides,
You wanna-
I just saw like a big American flag just like fly above my eyes. I was like, right, my bad.
but sad to see Catherine go and sad to leave with Bobby De Niro. And this is what I didn't say earlier. I think this is my least favorite of his performances. I don't think it's bad, but I
Tracks.
think he's always great. Like even at his, I don't know. Like I don't think I think he's very good here. And I think it says a lot that I think it's his weakest. I was saying it during the Cape Fear episode. I feel like Jimmy Conway is another one that doesn't blow me away,
Yeah.
but is like very good to great. And
Yeah.
I feel like Ace is in a similar realm, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
So I mean, it's like I feel like I guess I'm attracted to the flashy De Niro.
Yeah, definitely not. It's not like my favorite thus far. I don't know. I guess I wouldn't. Off the top of my head, it's not something that I would put at the bottom. But I do think. I mean, I think we've talked about it a little bit. But like to me, his best performance is as Jake LaMotta, but my
Mhm,
favorite, I think, is still Johnny Boy, partly because of the things that we touched upon today, just like how it is like, and like it almost feels like it's almost the spirit of like him as an actor, like not
Mm.
him as a person, but just like all right, this is me, we're starting this thing, and like I'm gonna go, like I'm here with my friends, like let's just have some fun and get crazy, and then he slowly grows up and sort of just learns to be this rock of a man.
Yeah, and I think that the 1-2 of Raging Bull and King of Comedy is something he's yet to top. Like those two performances back to back being so wildly different from one another and being so uniquely good in their own right is just astounding to me. And it just goes to prove the power of De Niro as a performer.
Yeah. He shows a lot of a range amongst these.
I can't choose between Raging Bull and King of Comedy. I really can't, but those are definitely like my two faves now.
Yeah, he does. King Comedy is great, and I feel like, man, I just feel like in
Taxi Driver.
out of all the movies that we've watched, I feel like the only one that I don't think I've given enough just like love to is King Comedy, because it is one that I keep kind of coming back to just in my mental, where I'm like, man, like I think this thing really did have like a lot to say about like the media and like fame and stuff that I don't think I like touched upon.
I found
enough.
it interesting when they did the Ace Rothstein show in this, how it felt like
Rupert.
weirdly
Yeah.
Rupert-esque. Yeah.
And then
When
you
he's
know,
like juggling on
also-
stage, you're like,
yeah.
stop juggling. What are you doing?
It also just feels like hot off the trails of like having, it's not hot off the trails of Tiger King, but like just having the Tiger King like in my head, where it's just like, oh god,
How
why are
come he
you
has 10
fucking-
blueberries and I only have 5?
why are you sitting here fucking self-sabotaging yourself on camera, buddy? You're not helping anything.
So sad to see De Niro go.
Sad to see De Niro go. He's definitely always just been like you like good shit, dude. Like
How
you're
many
doing
movies do we have left before Irishman?
great. 9.
9 before. It's not 9 including, right?
9 including Irishman.
Okay, so we have
there's
8 movies until we get more De Niro, which I mean, it
Not
sounds
that
like
much.
sounds like a lot. Like in terms of like 8 weeks feels like a long time.
He's
but
been in 8 thus far.
that's crazy. So well, it feels like a fucking whirlwind of Sassy that
Wait.
we've been on this year. So
Wait.
far.
It is 9 and then the Irishman. There is 25 movies.
Oh, okay.
Not 20. Wait, how many are there?
Killer Flower Moon.
25. So there is 9 and then Irishman because there are 25.
Not counting Killing the Flower Moon.
Not counting Killer the Flower Moon.
Cool.
So I've been
So,
saying 24 this whole pot. That's bad.
I mean,
yep, that is bad.
Here we go. Boxcar Bertha doesn't count. We're taking that out of his filmography.
I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like he would even approve of that. I'd hope.
No, he'd be like, "Fuck you." I tried.
It meant something to me. Yeah, all right, dude.
No, it didn't.
Fucking have you
If
watched it
fucking
since?
John Cassavetes
No.
came up to me and slapped my shoulders and went, "You just spent your whole life making a piece of shit," I'd be
Kill myself.
demoralized. I
I
would
don't
literally
know.
never make a movie again.
I might hit him.
We all had very different reactions.
I'm
Man,
not
I
a
almost just
physically
want to like
violent
get out of
person.
this Sassy thing and just watch Husbands and just fucking call it a day. Never watch a
don't know. I
movie
got-
again.
I've got this weird feeling about Cassavetes. So I'm like, who's this man? I just hear so much about him. I feel like he's like this myth.
He is.
And like
He
I've
is,
seen,
yeah.
and like from what I've seen of him, I'm like, what are these guys like? I don't get what these guys are talking about. Obviously, because I don't know anything about him. But like, is he a dick?
I mean, it might have been a
Kinda,
little.
yeah.
Like, I
kind
mean,
of
like,
a dick.
but probably
'Cause,
more,
like,
more
they're
like
just-
the
they're-
kind of dick that like
Yeah.
he's a dick in like his intelligence. Like he
The
feels
two-
like he's like better than you.
The
I
two
feel like
real
that's
life,
the energy he might exude.
yeah, the two real life instances in which that I just only know him from are the one you spent your whole life making a piece of shit, kid, and for some reason I just imagine him like chewing gum when he says that. I'm like, man, it's not very
In
nice
the
to
Dick
say.
Cavett interview.
And then the Dick Cavett interview, it's like what?
Which is
Like
just the
it
best
is.
thing.
It is really funny, but I'm also like, that's not very nice of
it's-
you,
it's
Mr.
not nice.
Cassavetes.
But what's weird is I feel like every time I look at Cassavetes, and I think that's part of the reason why I like Husbands so much more now too, is just like I've accepted I love watching him act like
Mhm.
so much. Like I love his directing and I love all of it, but I love seeing him on screen just as much.
I think
just
he's
don't know.
He's a dick to whatever he deems as phony. That's his whole thing.
You
He,
should
like,
see him bitch about his
Mr.
movie
Holden
opening night
Caulfield.
coming
He-
out and
he-
not
yeah.
being seen.
he loves the people he loves, and he'd care about people that he cares about more than anybody else has the literal capacity to. But if like you are like a Hollywood slick whatever, he's like
Elitist.
literally fuck you. You're a piece of shit. He's the guy of the streets. He's like, do it yourself. I'm a hardworking man. I'm a blue collar man.
What's
and
the
all I
deal-
care about is love.
What
Oh, he's the best.
Shadows was made and also just because I feel like this is irrelevant in a sense because we just started going off on Cassavetes, but he is a goddamn influence on our boy Scorsese.
He
like
is.
a big one.
He is. And he's
I also don't
the
how old,
Godfather.
who is he? Like,
Well-
is he old? Is he older than Sassy? Like, was
Yes.
he like way
Yes.
before Sassy?
Yes.
Like,
He
the
is his
only
first-
images and things that I've seen of him, he's like fucking young.
He's not that
And it's
young,
like, is
and
he an
died
actor
young.
or is he a director?
Both. He acted to make money so he could direct, and he liked acting and whatever. And also, he died when he was like 50 something, I think.
From alcohol?
Corrosion of the liver from alcohol. I'm pretty sure.
I'm about
Yeah,
to say, seems like he was a drinker.
he's 59. Yeah, they're all drinkers. He was 59. And he died from cirrhosis of the liver. That's literally what I said. Good for me.
And Jenna Rollins just turned 90 like the other day.
Ooh.
Crazy. His wife
Oh.
and like Muse.
His son directed The Notebook.
Yes. And Alpha Dog.
Oh, I didn't know he
And
was son was
Jenna
Nicholas
is in it.
Sparks.
No.
That's
Nicholas
so cool.
Cassavetes or Nick Cassavetes. I don't fucking give a shit. Anyway, so what have you guys watched recently?
Well, goodbye, De Niro. We love you. I don't want you to forget that.
What
Well,
have I watched recently?
I've sprinkled it in a couple times, but I did watch Punch Drunk Love for the second time a few days ago, and it was mighty nice, man. It was mighty nice. I'm not super familiar with Paul Thomas Anderson's work. I do think I think that might have actually been the first Paul Thomas Anderson movie that I had seen.
I think
Punch
that
Drunk
tracks
Love.
based on
No,
the conversation.
Inherent Vice was, but you don't remember.
We have
it.
an asterisk on it,
I know, but it was. You watched
Technically.
the whole thing and you were awake the whole time.
which is crazy. It's like, what? I must have been fucking.
You're going to probably
were.
watch it and go, oh, nope, I remember all this.
Well, I feel like I'll just have the nice, like,
The exact opposite of everyone's reaction to Inherent Vice.
I just feel like I'll have the nice, like, I don't know why, but I'm understanding. But,
You know, that would work out real well for that one.
It would.
but I'm a real fucking, like, I'm a sap. I'm just like a hopeless romantic man, and I love, like you guys are talking about Cassavetes. Like, I love love, and when it's depicted genuinely, or when I feel like I can connect to it genuinely, more so than being depicted genuinely. There's no genuine depiction of anything. But when I feel like I can genuinely connect to it, it always resounds with me, and I like it very much. We kind of touched upon it with romantic movies, and I feel like we did name drop Punch Drunk Love when we talked about romance movies.
We did.
Last week,
I
but
think I said it was my favorite.
it is just like it went from 4.5 to 5 because I gotta say, like, the first time I watched it, I was definitely viewing it with my male lens, where like the whole time I was just like, poor Barry, like, you poor guy, like, I feel bad for you, like, you really just don't, like, it's hard for you to operate in the world, and I can really relate to that. Whereas like my second viewing, I watched it with someone of the opposite gender, and they had different interpretations of like Barry and his actions, and like it did open my eyes to my own binary way of thinking, but it also, I think, increased the love that was already there for the movie, because it added so much more humanity that I was already ignoring in place for like sympathy. I think I was doing sympathizing more than like empathizing. And it's funny because, before I chose to watch this movie, there was a couple slated for this day where I was like, I don't know. I know you like comedies, but that's about all that I know. And I know you don't like Adam Sandler, and we definitely have to fix that. So what's going on? So, there's a couple of different options. And at one point, I'm looking at Punch Drunk Love, and then I'm looking at Uncut Gems. I'm like, ooh, I don't know what to pick. And I was like, you know what? I feel like the feelings you have about Adam Sandler, you probably don't want to see him be all like sexy and gross in Uncut Gems. And I was like, we can build to that. Let's start with Punch Drunk Love. And we're watching Punch Drunk Love, having a great time, and then comes the hotel, where they're like right there, when the bed scene in the hotel, we're like, I just want to pluck your eyes out and bash your face in, and they're just like whispering. And I just remember looking over at her, and she was like, this isn't sexy times to you? And I was like, well, in Uncut Gems, he literally goes, I'm gonna come, while jumping out of a closet. So
I love how the first time he says, holy shit, I'm gonna come in that movie too, he's like, holy shit, I'm gonna get, like, he drags it out, and then when he comes out of the closet, he just goes, I'm gonna come. Like, that's literally like,
it feels like,
dude, and doesn't he say it in the taxi too?
Yeah.
Like,
oh no, he just basically comes. Like,
okay.
holy shit! Oh my god! Oh fuck!
What a
So
good
yeah,
movie.
that's why I had you write down.
Sorry for anyone that had to
Very
listen
sexy
to my
times.
virtual When Harry Met Sally reenaction.
I also can we acknowledge the Punch Drunk Love fucking this is back.
Oh my god, it's my favorite. One of my favorite parts of the movie when he goes on the phone. He tells the person on the sex line, like, "Hey, don't give him my real name. Tell him my name's Jack." And they're like, "Okay." And she gets on the phone and she goes, "Hi, is this Jack?" And he goes, "Yeah, this is Back." And like doesn't even acknowledge it. It's so good.
And did I say this on the pod? If I did, you can cut it. But just the thing that has stuck with me the most is when he leaves her apartment and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And bye-bye.
And bye-bye. And he keeps saying it as he's walking down the hall. And bye-bye, you stupid motherfucker. And bye-bye. I'm like,
so
that is the moment
Listen.
I feel the most because I don't know how often I leave even your guys' apartment and I just repeat the thing I just said to you guys. I'm like, why can't I say goodbyes? Like, why am I so bad at it?
I hate saying goodbye.
How do
That's
you
why.
end? That's like my biggest problem. How do you end conversations?
And bye-bye.
That's why I like talking to you guys because I can literally just go, all right, man, I'm leaving now.
Is that why we're so attached to the goodbye?
Goodbye. At
I
least we
feel
know how
like
to
it
end.
is kind
Can
of
we
like-
change it to and bye-bye? That's
Yes,
less
we
scary.
can,
And
we can.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Finally,
bye-bye.
15 episodes deep.
And
And
bye-bye.
stupid.
I love it. I
Okay,
literally
here's the thing.
love
That
it.
scene is like the most relatable and like just the most like funniest, like hilarious. And then it's followed right after by like the most human version of like I feel like in a typical romance movie.
That's
he
what
goes,
she calls him.
Yeah,
right?
he goes down the stairs, he gets the phone call, and then it's immediately him running up to the door.
That's
Yeah.
my
But
that's my
instead-
favorite moment.
But instead it's him like answering the phone call and her saying like, I just wanted you to know that I really want to kiss you just now. And how he immediately
Yeah?
just starts.
No, he doesn't immediately. He's
Oh,
like,
oh,
yeah. Dude, let's watch that.
And then
Let's
the
watch
running
it.
and how he goes
just
down
watched
fucking.
it.
He
All
goes
the
down
wrong-
6 different hallways, and then he even leaves. He even leaves out the wrong door, and
it.
it's like, then he finally gets there, and there's like, and the person I was watching it pointed it out, and because in my head it's like it's always like open the door, immediate kiss, and it's like nope. There's literally like a open the door, a brief moment of acknowledgement, and then the kiss, and then that's everything to me. I love it. If you
And
haven't
the
seen
music's perfect.
If you haven't seen Punch Drunk Love, you need to. Just go watch it. To quote Paul Thomas Anderson, it's about love, baby.
Love.
What about you, boys?
I watched a real wild movie called Symbiocytotoxoplasm. Take
Did it?
Mhm.
Have we talked about this on the pod? I don't
I-
think
you-
so.
No, we have
For
not.
Frank-
Well, I mean, we may have brought it up, but
Frank
I don't
has
know if
definitely
we've-
talked to me about that movie.
I
for
watched
sure.
it right before we started doing the pod,
Interesting.
like a week before. Or
Your
something.
recommendation was on my COVID list, so I was like keeping it in the back pocket, and I was trying to find something short to watch that day, and 75 minutes is a real lean runtime, so I figured that was kind of perfect. And it certainly is a movie unlike anything I've ever seen,
Yeah.
especially given the form of documentary that it seems to sort of be both taking in a realistic and fictional way.
Mhm.
But I think that it's almost impossible to discern what is actually fiction and what is actually reality in that movie, and that's what I think the true value comes from within it. And I don't that's my thing. I almost feel like if it's mostly planned, I don't like it. But I think if it isn't mostly planned, and it might be in the eyes of William Greaves, the director. But the crew scenes and stuff would feel very pretentious and annoying to me if it was all staged, where they're literally not organically talking about these things and asking these questions. I think it's interesting that they took it upon themselves to bring the cameras into these rooms with them. Frank, can you explain what this movie is? Because you probably
Wait,
have a better grasp.
wait.
I'm going down a rabbit hole of a movie that is impossible
I
to
do-
explain without going into any explanation. So,
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this the movie that you talked about with all the F-bombs?
oh,
Yes.
1001.
Okay.
It feels
Okay.
almost obsessed with saying it, and it definitely stings every time like a gunshot because it is used in such a negative context. And it sucks to say it, but if you can look past it, I think this is literally one of the like craziest things ever because it's a movie about making a movie that doesn't exist, and then it's in the movie they're filming making the fake movie, and then they're filming the people filming the fake movie, and also there are random asides where the crew of the movie sit down and are like, what the fuck are we working on? And that's the movie. It's 70 minutes of watching people. What is the line between reality and fiction? Like how all documentaries. This taps into something that I feel real passionate about. That people are too complicit with documentaries as if they are just inherently fact. But it's like somebody's manipulating the information and presenting
Documentaries
it
are still
to you.
written.
Yes, it bothers me that people don't acknowledge that, and I think that's what things like this brilliantly are attacking, and they address it in the movie, like being like, well, he's gonna choose what he shows or not. Like, we can record this and talk, and he might not
He's
show any
talking
of it.
to him in the footage, like, Bill, I don't know if you've watched this or not, but or if this will end up in the movie, what this is, because the whole crew seems
Fucking
to be
love it.
completely at odds with him.
Yeah.
Most of the movie, where
'Cause
they
he
don't
has-
understand. There's even a scene where the actor gets super frustrated and walks off and
Now-
leaves because they think that he's just a hack who doesn't know what he's doing. But that's the cool thing about it, whereas it's like either he's a hack or he's a genius, or he just happened to stumble upon like a completely masterful accident. Like it might have been completely chance that this movie exists, but regardless of, and it's scored by Miles Davis.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Like it's insane too. And it's, kind of a time capsule of the place. It's in Central Park in 1968, a very tumultuous time. Socially and everything, obviously reflective of today's time too. At that time,
An African American director.
that too, yep. And they talk about that more specifically toward the end of the movie. I feel like that's never something they dig as deep into until it reaches its latter half. And then that conversation with the homeless man at the end is real poignant too.
It's Kiarostami on crack.
Yeah, man, it really is. And it feels like, another thing that it kind of reflected for me was like the idea of working on movies. And it gave me a similar feeling to something like Living in Oblivion, which I found it interesting that
I've still never
Steve
seen that.
Buscemi has an interview about symbiote psychotoxoplasm on Criterion.
Isn't he a part of Take Two?
He might be.
The sequel? I
think
think
he saw the screening of it at Sundance when he was there for Reservoir Dogs and another one of his movies, and he just went because he thought it sounded interesting, and it was like the craziest experience for him. And then I guess the projectors stopped working halfway through the movie, and Bill Greaves was there, and he walked up to the front and was like, well, we're having technical difficulties with the film right now, but I will take any questions that you have about it. And at that point where they're like halfway through it, he was like, oh, this is definitely a planned staged bit in the movie. Like, this is part of it, where he's going to come talk to us and ask us questions. Like, this isn't like on an accident that the movie stopped playing. And he's like, but it was. And even still, people still talk about that screening as being like super special, simply because the movie itself elicits this crazy reaction because anyone watching it can't discern exactly what it is or what it's doing.
Yeah.
So I think that in some ways you could hate that, and if you sound like you like that, then you'll probably love it.
I feel like it'll be definitely confusing to sit down and watch.
It was a
especially
lot.
if,
Gets
especially
a little
if you're
grating
not,
at points.
especially if you're not super familiar with the technical aspect of like filmmaking and stuff.
It's
like
definitely a niche movie.
that.
for sure.
But what I was, am I remembering correctly? Is that the movie with the actress or the actor who does it? Like, I know that none of them really know what it's about, but like they don't give her any real information about the movie, or am I misremembering?
I think you're misremembering.
I think I'm literally thinking of Miami Vice. Gong Li didn't know like English, right?
Yes, she
Yeah.
learned
Spoke
French
frenetically.
It's crazy. But I think it is a movie that's worthwhile. And I remember saying that I was going to make every crew I work with watch it, but I haven't done that. But maybe I should. Just be like, aren't making movies crazy, you guys?
Yeah, this is gonna suck. Get ready.
Yeah, just like
That and Living in Oblivion are the two that I think are most like. Even though I don't even think Living in Oblivion is as good a movie from what I remember, like as far as a movie is concerned, it captures the feeling of being on set so well.
That's all I've ever heard.
It's absurd.
What
And
you
same
got?
with this
What you got, Frankie?
Fuck, I keep meaning to
Criterion
look.
Channel for Symbiote Psychotoxoplasm Part. Take one.
It's just such a great name.
Isn't Punch and Glove also on the Criterion Channel?
I don't think Punch Drunk Love is available on.
But you
Criterion
have the
Channel.
I thought that every Criterion movie was available on
No,
Criterion.
it's
No, not all the
stupid.
time.
It's stupid that it's not.
Certain
that
streaming
way.
services have rights to streaming.
I
those
think Punch and Glove is on
movies.
Netflix. It was at one point.
It definitely was at some point. It's not on Criterion. Hold on.
Punch Drunk Love is an easy movie to go find, though.
It is no
And a good
longer on
one.
Netflix.
Damn.
So I don't know. Go find it. You buy the Criterion.
You can
it's
find
worth it.
Punch Drunk Love on HBO Go.
ETA
Nice.
deserves money.
I think I'm gonna say Exotica for this week.
Ooh, baby.
Just
Adam Egoyan.
yeah, all his
Go
movies
in.
are coming to Criterion in a day from recording this. But at the time this is out, they will already have been
Most
on
of
the
them,
channel.
right? Most of his important ones.
It's his first 7, and then or 8, 7 or 8, and then a random one from like 10 years later after that run.
okay.
But like most of his like acclaimed, which is mostly just Exotica and Sweet Hereafter, those are both going to be on there.
okay.
And this was the third time I've seen Exotica, and I literally think it's a movie that takes the form of filmmaking to its like furthest degree of possibility of like being both a reflection of the artist and like what feels like, you know, some self-examination on top of like a fully crafted story where every single detail in the script and the filmmaking is building upon itself to come back later. Like literally there is not an element that isn't relevant to something else in the film. And like this was the third time I've seen it, and just observing the like pure construction of the movie, which like also acknowledges like it's a movie about construction and how people dealing with a tragedy, like they don't talk about it, and it's all about avoiding a thing, and information is very slowly revealed and whatever, and it's easy to get lost in it on the first watch, but upon rewatches, like seeing this, like it feels like a labyrinth of like thought, and it's insane to think about. Like I literally don't know how you could do that. It's like Kubrick levels of planning. Like it really, really is. It's not like there's some elements that maybe don't work as well as others, whatever. He's not as like technically profound, I suppose, but like it's such a like an aligned filmmaking experience that blew me away. On top of its like frank emotionality on top of it, where it's like almost the most empathetic movie I've ever seen. It's like kind of overwhelming, but it's also very strange and not easy to like slip into.
The one time I've seen it, the ending was a real gut punch.
And then knowing that's the ending, the whole movie, it's haunting me. It's like knowing where it goes. It's like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
And just every time I'm just like, how do you do this? It's so good. It's so fucking
How has he not
good.
made anything that good since?
I mean,
or Sweet Hereafter was after.
It was after, and a lot of people think that's better, which is insane. But I'm excited to rewatch it. I think I'm going to watch all of them now that they're on Criterion, and it is literally the first 7. So I was like, okay, I'm probably just going to do that. Yeah, highly recommended. I mean, it's definitely not for everyone, but if it sounds appealing, I recommend it.
Good shit.
Well, you equated it when we talked about it on the phone earlier. You equated it to this to one feeling. I just don't remember what it was. It was in our conversation about Punch Drunk Love.
The avoidance of emotion. Yeah. That's what literally the whole thing is. Like it's crazy. It's weird ways that people don't know how people don't know how to deal with grief, and like this whole idea of it's a small world after all, and we're all connected, and the only way to like get through anything is by being together, even if we're also the cause of our own problems or whatever. It's a crazy movie. Fucking crazy.
Sounds dope.
All right, that's it.
There's
so,
that.
Oh my God, you can email us
at thechroniccanon@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter at chroniccanon.
Damn,
Yeah.
we never said that earlier.
Comments on our YouTube and stuff if you want.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is as long as Casino, but it might be.
No way.
I mean, it's hard.
We
to keep
started
track.
late.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, it's long,
for sure.
but
no doubt.
it's not as long as Casino.
All right. Well, I suppose that's been another episode of the Chronic Canon, diving through the cesspool. I'm Jesse.
I'm Frank.
Brandon. And
signing off.
Bye bye.
And bye bye.
And bye bye.
Maybe we should